Our story starts with Feng Xian, nicknamed Lubu, finishing off his own godfather for some reason. He says sorry to his godfather because his death was needed for his success. Lubu finished all retainers of his godfather as well, so there can be no one seeking revenge from him in the future. After that, Lubu reports everything that transpired to the counselor-in-chief, and counselor is quite happy about it. So he rewards Lubu with the Fang Tian halberd and the legendary horse Qi Tu, and he becomes his godfather as well. After that, Lubu goes through countless battles and he is victorious every time. One day he gets arrested by his own new godfather and he's brought before the Council of the Generals. He gets killed right there in the Council of Generals. When he opens his eyes, he finds himself in a binary space which tells him that he is destined to be a loser. He then once again opens his eyes. This time, he has returned to the past, a day before the Battle of Sishui. He don't remember anything from his future, but he is having a headache from the recent voice which called him a loser. Ho Cheng, one of the feudal lords, informs him that maybe he's destined to be a ruler. That's why he keeps on hearing those weird voices, and Lubu starts laughing after hearing it. Lubu corrects him by saying that voice is calling him a failure, so how can he become a ruler? They get interrupted from behind by a horse rider who asks them how can they be so relaxed with the enemies just up ahead. Lubu says that he is patrolling because he is feeling down, and it has nothing to do with him. The man turns out to be Hu Zhen, who is pissed at Lubu, and he tells him that he can behead him for challenging his authority. Lubu and all of his men get their weapons out, and Lubu informs Hu Zhen that everyone who wanted him dead is already 6 feet under, and if he wants him to send him to the afterlife right now. Hu Zhen is getting scared as he thinks they are about to rebel, but he gets saved as another horse rider comes from behind. This horse rider is called Hua Xiong, and he interrupts them by saying that he wants to join their discussion, and if they are discussing on the tactics to beat the enemy. Hu Zhen starts retreating after ordering Hu Xiong to calm his men before they start rebelling. Lubu mocks him by saying that it was a good day to rebel, but his enemy is a coward, so he can't do anything. Hua Xiong says that they have not yet encountered their enemy Sun Jian, and they should not fight among themselves. After hearing it, Lubu and his men start laughing out loud like madmen. Ho Cheng says Hu Zhen was trying to show off in their territory of Bing just because he's a confidant of their chancellor-in-chief. As they march towards Sishui, Lubu orders all of his men to start laughing out loud whenever they spot Hu Zhen next time. The very same night at Yiki Pass, Hu Zhen informs others that he received news that their enemy Sun Jian has an army of 50,000, while their Xiliang army amounts to 150,000 troops. One of his advisors, Zhao Sen, is sucking up to him by saying they can easily crush Sun Jian with their numbers, and Lubu is also present in that meeting along with all other generals. Lubu badmouths Hu Zhen for being a dimwit, and he asks him how he became their commanding officer while having zero experience in war. Hua Xiong pulls his spear on the neck of Lubu and he warns him to stop his nonsense. Lubu has zero care about his empty threats and he warns them to take Sun Jian more serious as he can easily beat their 150,000 troops with his 50,000 men alone. Hu Zhen shouts at Lubu that he should come up with a plan to deal with Sun Jian, or he will punish him according to the court-martial. Lubu suggests they should send a team of fast riders to check the formation of Sun Jian camp for traps or hidden troops. Their main force will raid Sun Jian's camp while a detachment will cut off the escape route of Sun Jian. Hu Zhen is thinking that he can easily crush Sun Jian with his overwhelming number of troops, and such cowardly tactics are not good for his reputation. Lubu has heard enough and he starts moving away after saying that his Bing army will not be a part of an all-out war, and Hu Zhen can rush to his death on his own. After Lubu went away, Hu Zhen orders Hua Xiong to ready the soldiers for a night raid on Sun Jian's main camp. Wei Shu informs him that Hu Zhen took his men for the war if the Bing army is not going to follow them. Lubu tells him to order his men to sleep tight without any worry because he is sure Hu Zhen is a stupid commander and he will die in this war. While he is sleeping, a voice rings in his head telling him that he is destined to fail. He then appears in a system space where the voice asks him if he is ready to reshape his life from this moment on. Lubu still cannot believe that he will become a failure in the future. The system informs him that it's a 4D life simulator which uses techniques to change the real and fake to let the person experience unlimited possibilities in a limited life. Due to an unknown malfunction, the system was banished to a 3D space. There is a chance that its users can enter a higher dimension. The system asks him to press yes if he wants the photon computer to start a new life, or he can press no to give up on the life simulator and return to reality. Lu Bu is a bit confused, but he is curious at the same time to find out what this simulation can do. He chooses the yes button as he wants to find out if he can really change his destiny. The system starts flashing brightly, and it informs Lu Bu that his information has been successfully recorded and life simulation will activate now. After that, we move to a house in Han Dynasty where a baby is being born. This baby is the reincarnation of Lu Bu, and he is also confused to see himself getting reborn as a baby. After 7 years, some bullies in the village are talking about old Lu's son who just sits around the same place the entire afternoon. The bully says that he looks like a monster in the skin of a human being. Young Lubu glares at the bully, which makes him more angry. The bully kid asks him why did he glare at him, and they refer to him as a monster. Lubu tells him to move because he's blocking the sunlight. The bully says that Lubu is always annoying and he's going to teach him a lesson. After their fight, Lubu is sitting by himself and he looks quite beaten up, but he says that he lost this fight, but the condition of bullies isn't better than him. Out of nowhere, a system screen appears in front of him which states that he is in the simulation. The life of a farmer and his states are written below. He only gained 1 reputation point after his last fight with the local bullies. Lubu now knows that this status points will change if he engages in big battles or some similar stuff, but he is still not sure if he's living in reality or it's just a dream. Position and wealth can be hard for him to gather, so he decides to learn martial arts in order to increase his strength. The very next day, he starts training his body. His father shuns him for training all day instead of helping him in his work. Plus, their Lu family is poor, and if he uses all of his food to train, then there won't be enough food left for them to survive this year. Lubu used to easily lift 3 times this weight by himself when he was on the same age in his previous life, but he is now very weak. Few months later, Lubu is cutting firewood by himself. He is feeling quite exhausted, and he gets a notification that his strength just increased by 1. When Lubu became 9 years old, his sister was born, but he heard his father saying that they should sell her off because girls are always raised for other families, which is considered a scourge. Lubu screams at them to not sell her, and he tells them that he will eat less from now on, and they can give his share to his little sister. His father says that he can't do it because if he starves to death, their bloodline will end with him. Lubu says that he will do manual labor to earn extra money for his sister. His father keeps on convincing him, but Lubu is quite resilient in his resolve. His resilience pays off as his intellect increases by 1, which in turn helps him convince his father to not sell his sister. From that day on, Lubu worked hard every day and he learned farming techniques. Although he had not touched any farm work in his previous life, but it became very easy once you start doing it by yourself. Lubu learned a lot from farming. He is able to guess the weather and determine the kind of fertilizer based on the condition of the land. He was also able to turn 2 acres of unfertile land of his family into fertile ones. Even the villagers are gossiping about how they had the worst land in the village, but Son of Lu changed it into fertile one. This in turn increases his reputation by 2. But Lubu is thinking that farming will not change his reputation by much, and he also has no idea that the land turned so rich, but why his wealth has not increased by 1. Lubu asks his father that why does the chief pay no tax? His father tells him that the chief collects all of the tax from the poor people of this village. That's why they barely survive each year. Lubu gets angry as the chief's family don't work and they need to pay tax to chief as well as the government. His father informs him that the chief is responsible for registration and taxation in this area, and if they had not handed over a portion of their total harvest from the 2 acres, he could have taken his mother and his sister as tax. Lubu gets angry as there is no future for honest farmers in this land, and his father signs. Lubu promises to himself that even if he don't become a glorious general like in his previous life, he will at least not get bullied by others. After a few years, a wild rabbit is running through the forest. An arrow moves rapidly toward the rabbit and it manages to pierce through his neck. This arrow was shot by Lubu, who is 12 years old by now, and he's quite satisfied with his archery skills. All this time, the total strength of Lubu barely increased up to 3 points, and he's preparing to return back to his home. Lubu returns back to his warehouse to store the rabbits, but this time Lu Hong, the village chief, is waiting for him, and he informs Lubu that some part of what he just hunted will also be paid as part of the tax. Lubu becomes enraged after hearing it, but Chief tells him that it's an order from the imperial court. Lubu asks him how can the imperial court meddle with people's lives. This enrages the chief and he warns him that his act just now can be considered a sign of rebellion and he can get rid of his family anytime. His father apologizes to the chief in his place and he tells Lu Bu to hand over half meat of everything he just hunted. This enrages Lu Bu even more as he tries his best to control the beast inside him. The chief says that he's becoming a beast himself while hunting them. His father begs Lu Bu to just do as the chief says. Lu Bu moves toward the chief while dropping half of the rabbits, and he says that the chief can take these with him. After getting close to the chief, he gets his knife out and he swings it toward the direction of the chief. After he swings the knife, we see a lot of blood splattering, and his reputation increases by 1. In reality, Lu Bu just killed a rabbit after placing it behind the chief to make him afraid. Lu Bu tells him that he will not pay any tax from now on, and the chief will settle their missing portion by himself. Lu Bu informs him that if he ever single out his family, he will come to his house, and one by one he will kill all of his family members. His father pushes him back from the chief, and he starts apologizing to the chief non-stop. The chief runs out of their house while saying that he will even out the score with them. His father starts scolding it as he just ruined everything he built all of his life, but Lu Bu says that if he handed over the meat to the chief, then he would have become more strict on them. He says that they can just kill Lu Hong and divide his lands among the villagers after that. His father has heard enough and he smacks the crap out of him. His father tells them to pack their things and they will leave this place with their mom and sister. But all of a sudden they hear loud voices stating that the Lu house is on fire. They head toward their house, which is on fire. His mom and sister could not make it out on time as the house was locked from outside. He tries to head inside the burning building, but his father stops him as he already lost his mom and daughter, and now he's the only family left. They keep on helplessly watching it as the whole building burns down to the ground. After the fire ends, his father tells him that everything is gone now. But all of a sudden, they hear a voice stating that it serves them right as they already hated the Lu family for so long. These voices belong to the villagers, and they are mocking the Lu family for messing with the chief. Lu Bu couldn't hold himself back, and the beast within him gets out. He gets his bow out as he's thinking all of them are murderers and they all deserve to die. His father yells at him to stop as he already destroyed their house, and he will also lose him if he makes another blunder. Lu Bu turns back and tells his father to shut up as he will now take care of things his way. His father can easily see that the one in front of him is no longer his son, but a monster in human flesh. With that said, Lu Bu shoots his arrow at one of the guys who was bad-mouthing their family just now. The person drops dead on the ground, and Lu Bu remembers how his mother loved him, because in his past life he had no mother, so he couldn't knew what a mother's warmth felt like. With that said, Lu Bu pulls up his bow and he aims at the fleeing civilians. He shoots the arrow which pierces through another civilian. The more he kills, the more humanity he loses, and the grip of the monster is getting stronger on his body. He remembers how his sister reminded him of his daughter from his previous life, and she was an honest little angel. His dream shatters as he shoots another arrow toward the fleeing villagers. The arrow pierces through the leg of a bully and he starts screaming in pain. Lu Bu starts moving toward the bully and he keeps on begging him to spare his life. The bully tells him the truth, that the chief is the one who called them to start the fire and it's not their fault. Lu Bu pulls out his knife as the bully keeps on begging him. Lu Bu forgives him by slicing his neck in a single swing of the knife. The bully tries to stop the bleeding, but the knife cut was too deep and he bleeds to death. The thinking cycle of Lu Bu is clouded by revenge as he's thinking of killing every single person in the village. He keeps on walking toward the village while leaving dead bodies in his wake. When he reaches the village, some villagers run after thinking of him as a monster while some muster up their strength to face him. But no matter how much they make their resolve to fight him, they still can't get the feeling off that they are fighting a monster in human flesh instead of a kid. With that said, both sides rush toward each other. Lu Bu starts slicing off the necks of villagers without having any remorse. Once his blade becomes dull from all the blood, he shoots arrows through 2 villagers. After that, Lu Bu moves toward the last remaining villager who curses him and his whole family for this massacre. Lu Bu slices his neck a little bit so he can have a long and painful death. Lu Bu keeps on moving through the village, leaving dozens of dead bodies in his wake. There is now complete silence around him, and he moves to his last destination. In the end, he reaches the house of Chief Lu Hong. He again reminds him that he already warned him to not mess with his family or he will kill all of his family members one by one. Lu Bu already slaughtered his family, not even sparing the little kids or the women. Chief is afraid beyond belief and he falls down on his knees. He starts begging Lu Bu for his dear life. But Lu Bu tells him to say hi to Yama in hell as he swings his knife, which in turn slashes the neck of the chief. As Chief Lu Hong falls down to the ground, Lu Bu gets a system message that his reputation is increased by 15 and his intellect dropped to 0 because his mind is being clouded by revenge. Lubu burns the whole village as they had previously burned his home. Lubu's father keeps on saying that he did a sin raising a monster as he had burnt his wife and daughter in his hand. Lubu silently moves closer to his father and he goes down on his knees without saying anything. His father tells him to run away because the villagers who escaped must have reported everything to the officials and they will be coming for him. Lubu begs his father to leave this place with him, but his father tells him that his mother and sister both worked hard and they got no chance to enjoy life. But now they are gone and he needs to accompany them. His father shouts at him to just leave that place. Lubu smacks his head on the ground as a sort of respect for his father's orders and he starts leaving. His father puts a knife through his own heart and signs of life fade away from him. Lubu knows what his father just did, but he keeps on going away while crying. He remembers his father's last words and starts running away from the scene. After some time, Lubu arrives in an abandoned building. He starts resting there near fire while remembering everything that just transpired. The next morning, some guards arrive at that place and they say the fire was not put too long ago. The guard informs others that the one who massacred the whole village is hiding nearby and they should search for him in the surroundings. The guards start searching for Lubu in the nearby buildings, but unknown to them, Lubu is aiming at one of them from a rooftop. He shoots the arrow which pierces through the neck of a guard. The guard drops dead on the ground and his companion informs others about the location of Lubu. But at the same time, an arrow pierces through his chest and he drops on the ground. A guard comes out of the building Lubu was standing on and he alerts others that Lubu is right above him. The guard leaps toward the open field to take aim and shoot at Lubu. Lubu easily dodges his arrow by leaping forward. Lubu then retaliates by shooting an arrow which hits the shoulder of the guard. The guard is injured and he warns others that the skill of Lubu with bow are extraordinary and they must be careful. The guard starts shooting at him after getting on the rooftops. Lubu jumps down from the rooftop and he runs into the forest. After some time in the forest, the guards are telling each other that a storm is about to come and they need to find Lubu before it. Lubu, who is hiding on a tree, shoots an arrow and the guards become alerted. The arrow hits one of the guards, killing him in the process, and the other guards shoot arrows at him. Lubu dodges their arrows by leaping back and he leaps down from the tree while shooting an arrow, which successfully hits the second guard. After cushioning his fall, Lubu runs back deep into the forest. The guard says that Lubu is quite resilient like a cockroach and he needs to call for reinforcements. The guard pulls up a special whistle arrow. He then shoots it up in the sky, which alerts everyone in the area. The other guards who heard the whistling arrow became alerted and they start flanking toward the direction of the arrow. Lubu heard the noise of the whistling arrow as well and he knows well that the enemies will try to corner him. Lubu is thinking that he needs to run away from them before the storm comes in or else the arrows will become useless. Out of nowhere, an arrow is shot toward his location. Lubu dodges the arrow by leaping back. Lubu has only a few arrows left and he is thinking of ways to get rid of as many guards as he can, but before he can do anything, he gets shot through his shoulder with an arrow. This arrow came from the opposite direction, which means he is surrounded from both sides. Lubu looks up and there are already 2 guards present on a tree aiming at him. The storm rolls in and a heavy rain begins. The guards shoot another arrow and they start moving toward injured Lubu in unison. But Lubu cannot give up like this, so he gets up after mustering the last of his strength. Lubu is surrounded by guards from all directions, but he still rushes toward the guards while screaming out loud. But before he can reach them, he gets shot by another arrow. The guards keep showering him with arrows until he becomes immobile. The guards move close to check the monster, which killed more than 100 people in a single night. The guard leader informs him that he's going to get a death penalty, and he asks Lubu if he regrets his decision. Lubu tells him to F off as he is a real man and he made his own decision, so he stands by it until his death. The guard says it's a pity, and if Lubu had used this courage at the border, then he would have surely accomplished many great things and brought honor to his family. The guard leader pulls out a sword as he wishes for him to live a good life after his rebirth. The guard chops off his head in a single swing from his sword. The head of Lubu drops a bit far away from him and he's still thinking if this outcome was really necessary or if he could have changed this whole situation if he had made better decisions. After opening his eyes, he wakes up in the system space while having his original body. The system congratulates him for completing his first mission of exploring the simulation world. The system starts calculating his results and Lubu is thinking whether he is dead or alive. The system tells him that he killed everyone in the Lu village by himself, so his cruelty will give him admirers on the path of crime, and he receives final rank level 1. The system informs him that he died young, that's why he couldn't make any big contributions towards the path of crime, that's why he only got 1 point. He was unwilling to be oppressed, and his resistance brought enlightenment to the people living under oppression in the later generations, so he gets 15 reputation points. Lubu suffered from much exploitation and oppression. That's why he was not able to accumulate wealth, so he has 0 wealth points. Although the condition of his body was not great, but Lubu developed a dexterous body due to his hunting career, so his final power leveled up to 10. His final intellect is 0 because he used violence to solve everything instead of his brain. In the end, he got a violent death and a total rating of C. Now Lubu got an overall idea what this simulation thing is, but the C grade he received is quite bad. After calculating the rewards, Lubu got 28 simulator currency points, and he can pick one of 3 rewards given below which will strengthen his real body. He can choose between an elementary carpenter skill, tailor skill, or he can go for elementary level heart strengthening. Lubu chooses the elementary heart strengthening, and after some time he can feel his heart getting more pumped up. After heart strengthening is done, Lubu wakes up in his bed in the real world. Lubu asks Wei Shu, who is the brother of his wife, why there is so much noise outside, and Wei Shu tells him that Hu Zhen took General Hua Xiong with him to raid Sun Jian main camp. In the real world, only a few minutes have passed while he just lived 13 years in the simulation world. Lubu gets up and tells Wei Shu to prepare the men for war, but Wei Shu tells him that just before going to sleep he ordered all the men to relax because they are not going to join the war. Lubu tells him to just order the soldiers to prepare right away as he's about to change the course of history. The army of Hu Zhen is stationed a bit afar from the Sun Jian main camp. Hua Xiong reports to Hu Zhen that the camp of Sun Jian is having a rest, so their defenses are quite lax. Hu Zhen is quite happy as they came from behind Yike Pass and their enemies must not be expecting a surprise attack at this time. Hu Zhen orders Hua Xiong to lead a platoon and charge the Sun Jian camp from the side entrance, and at the same time, Hu Zhen will block the main entrance of Sun Jian camp. He further says that Lubu is still sleeping in his camp, so all credit of this victory will belong to him. Hua Xiong gets closer to the side entrance with his platoon, but he cannot detect any movements from the enemy yet, which alerts him a bit. He has no other choice as he cannot back down, so he orders his men to charge ahead. 2 guards who are stationed on the walls of Sun Jian camp spot the platoon invading them and they start screaming to alert others. One of them runs toward the drums to beat them loudly, but he gets killed after being shot by a barrage of arrows. After taking care of the lookouts, Hua Xiong makes his way inside the camp along with his platoon. He orders his men to search the camp, but something feels off, as they are not getting as much resistance as they expected. One of his men reports to him that there is no one in the camp. Hua Xiong knows that they have been tricked, so he orders his men to retreat. But it's too late as a barrage of fire arrows is shot toward his platoon. The whole camp is lit on fire as most of the buildings were already coated with oil. Hua Xiong orders his men to not be afraid as their commander-in-chief Hu Zhen is at the main entrance. At the same time, Hu Zhen is watching all of it unfold from a distance, and his men ask him if they should go and help General Hua Xiong. Hu Zhen is feeling that they are playing right into the enemy's hands, so he orders his men to retreat. He starts retreating by himself without having his troops retreat in a proper manner. At the same time, the army of Sun Jian, which was hiding in the jungle, rushes out from both sides. Hu Zhen already made it away, but his army is being surrounded from both sides. Hu Zhen is happy as he ran fast and he's now away from the main fight, but he gets alerted when General Zhu Darong from Sun Jian army calls out his name and starts chasing him. Zhu Darong is too close to him so he cannot run away, and his horse is also slower than his. Hu Zhen pulls out his sword as there is no other way but to fight him head on. Both of their swords clash as they cancel out each other's attack. They clash their sword for the second time, but there is no winner this time as well. Zhu Darong attacks Hu Zhen, but he manages to dodge it and only his cloth gets torn. Hu Zhen retaliates by performing a sword slash attack, but Zhu Darong dodges it by leaping back on the horse. They both keep on clashing their swords against each other for some time. Zhu Darong had enough of this stalemate, so he pushes his sword toward Hu Zhen with all of his force. Hu Zhen is barely holding him back as his whole body starts trembling. Zhu Darong notices it and he pulls his sword back. Zhu Darong says that Hu Zhen is not a complete idiot like people say, and Hu Zhen replies by saying that he has not fought in a solo fight for a long time. That's why he is being exhausted. But instead of fighting like a man, he starts running back toward his main army. Zhu Darong gets pissed as he has fought in wars for 20 years, but he has never seen a coward like Hu Zhen. Zhu Darong starts chasing him to get his head. At the same time, General Hua Xiong broke through the main camp and he got reunited with the main force. But the situation is still quite bad as they are surrounded from both sides by the Sun Jian army. Hua Xiong inquires about the location of Hu Zhen, and the captain informs him that he ran away as soon as he saw Hua Xiong fell into the trap. Both of them get alerted as they hear someone calling their names for help. It turns out Hu Zhen ran back to them and he's calling for their help as he's being chased by the enemy. Zhu Darong gets happy as he's about to catch up to Hu Zhen the coward. Zhu Darong tries to slash Hu Zhen to finish him off, but unknown to him, another slash attack moves toward him. He comes to a realization that there is a blade near his neck, but it's too late, as Hua Xiong manages to chop off his head in a single attack of his halberd. Zhu Darong falls down from his horse and his head flies off into the distance. Hu Zhen mocks the dead Zhu Darong for foolishly following him. Hu Zhen then orders Hua Xiong to break through the enemy formation with him, and he is thinking that maybe Lu Bu is the one who secretly leaked his plan to the enemy. But Hu Zhen is not so lucky as Sun Jian himself rushes toward him with his army, and he is pissed at them for killing his general. Hu Zhen becomes really afraid after hearing Sun Jian's voice, as he is known to be quite furious. Hua Xiong asks Hu Zhen to retreat first as he will try to stop the advance of Sun Jian. Hu Zhen is an ungrateful bastard, so he starts running back to his main army, leaving Hua Xiong behind to fend for himself. Hua Xiong advances towards Sun Jian army and he challenges Sun Jian to fight him in a one-on-one battle. Sun Jian is not a fool and he knows well that Hua Xiong is trying to buy time for their main army to retreat. Instead of fighting Hua Xiong in a one-on-one battle, Sun Jian orders his men to kill him. Hua Xiong gets ready to take them all head-on as dying on the battlefield is the biggest form of honor he can achieve. But before they can attack him, a lot of arrows are shot toward them. The arrows manage to pierce through the necks of many horsemen trying to kill Hua Xiong. Those arrows were shot by Lu Bu, who asks Sun Jian if he only knows how to bully people with numbers. Everyone on the battlefield gets alerted as Lu Bu makes his entrance. Lu Bu tells Sun Jian to buckle up as he's going to die by his hands. Lu Bu slowly makes his way to the battlefield and Hu Zhen is standing on his way. Hu Zhen is afraid as he's thinking Lu Bu came to kill him on his own. Lu Bu takes aim and shoots 3 arrows at the same time. Hu Zhen is thinking that he's done for, but the arrows pass by him. The 3 arrows move towards Sun Jian and his main army. Sun Jian barely manages to dodge one of the arrows and he gets a little scratch on his cheeks. But his subordinates are not as lucky as him as they get pierced by the arrows. Lu Bu is looking quite satisfied with his archery skills, as in the simulation world he had a weak body, so he couldn't use the full potential of his archery skills. Meanwhile, Sun Jian is a bit afraid as he barely managed to dodge the arrow of Lu Bu. Sun Jian asks his general Gong Fu about Lu Bu, and Gong Fu informs him that the real name of Lu Bu is Feng Xian, and it's said that he is capable of fighting against 100 men by himself. Gong Fu further informs him that he killed his previous godfather of Bing, and he pledged his loyalty to the cunning Dong Zhao. At the same time, the encirclement of Sun Jian army gets broken by a cavalry charge from Lu Bu's main army. Sun Jian orders his men to charge at the enemy in a full frontal attack. Lu Bu moves toward the Sun Jian main unit as he passes by the coward Hu Zhen. Lu Bu takes a hold of his legendary spear and he's giving off a menacing aura. Lu Bu charges at the center of the enemy formation by himself. Lu Bu starts slashing the soldiers in his way with ease. The whole area around Lu Bu gets filled with decapitated heads and bodies torn into 2 pieces with a single slash attack. Even Sun Jian, who is known to be quite furious on the battlefield, is afraid after witnessing the prowess of Lu Bu. After killing the regular soldiers on his way, Lu Bu starts moving towards Sun Jian. The main generals of Sun Jian gather together in order to stop Lu Bu. Yi Gong tries to slash Lu Bu with his long spear. Lu Bu dodges his attack by ducking down on his horse. Lu Bu retaliates by attacking Yi Gong with his spear. This time Yi Gong was not so lucky as he could not dodge in time, and he gets chopped into 2 pieces with a single attack from the halberd of Lu Bu. General Cheng Pu tries to stab Lu Bu from behind, but Lu Bu easily deflects his attack without looking back. The strength behind Lu Bu's counterattack was so fierce that Cheng Pu could barely hold on to his weapon. Lu Bu congratulates Cheng Pu for defending against one of his attacks. Lu Bu turns around and he thrusts his halberd into the shoulder of Cheng Pu. At the same time, Hu Zhen made it out of the encirclement thanks to the help of Lu Bu and his army of Bing. He is thinking of reporting to the Prime Minister that they lost this war due to Lu Bu. Unknown to him, Lu Bu is wreaking havoc amidst the rank of his enemies. Cheng Pu falls down from his horse and Lu Bu says sorry to him as he could not finish the job in one strike. Lu Bu raises his halberd to finish off Cheng Pu for real. But at the same time, Sun Jian tries to slash Lu Bu from behind. Without wasting any time, Lu Bu turns back and he blocks the attack of Sun Jian with his halberd. Sun Jian tries his best to overpower Lu Bu, but Lu Bu is unfazed, and he compliments Sun Jian for attacking him from behind like a coward. Sun Jian gets back and Lubu informs him that he's just like him because both of them can do anything for the sake of victory. He rushes towards Sun Jian while saying two tigers can't live on the same mountain. Sun Jian blocks his attack and he mocks Lubu for backstabbing his own godfather. They both keep on exchanging blows and Sun Jian gets pushed back with each attack. Their clash is getting fierce, but Sun Jian is showing signs of exhaustion. On the other hand, Lubu is completely fine and there are no signs of exhaustion visible on his face. Lubu is thinking maybe the heart strengthening is in effect, that's why he's not feeling tired even after such a prolonged battle. Lubu grabs his halberd with all of his strength as he is aiming for a decisive blow. The longsword of Sun Jian slips out of his hand as he could not bear the power of Lubu's attack. Lubu swings his spear towards Sun Jian to finish him off and Sun Jian knows well he cannot do anything to dodge it. Lubu swings his halberd towards Sun Jian, but it gets blocked. The attack just now was blocked by Changpu, who is barely hanging on to his life after getting his shoulder stabbed by Lubu. Changpu begs Sun Jian to retreat as he will stall Lubu for as much time as he can. Sun Jian picks up his fallen sword and he orders his men to help him escape before the enemy army can surround them. At the same time, Lubu just beheaded Changpu and he puts his halberd into the ground. Lubu pulls out his bow and he aims at the fleeing Sun Jian. Lubu shoots the arrow with all of his force and it flies through the whole battlefield. Finally, the arrow manages to pierce through the chest of Sun Jian from behind. Sun Jian knows he cannot survive for long, so he orders his men to retreat without looking back. All of his men want to help him, but they cannot let his sacrifice be in vain, so they retreat from the battlefield. Sun Jian is fully exhausted as he falls down from his horse. Sun Jian tells Lubu that he has not fought against a monstrous general like him before. He is still laughing, and he tells Lubu that he was right, and two tigers can't live on the same mountain. After some time, Huashong finishes off the last remaining soldier of Sun Jian. Finally, the battle ends at dawn and the whole battlefield is littered with corpses from both sides. One of Huashong's captains reports to him that Sun Jian's main army has retreated, and the ones who were left behind have been eliminated. Huashong asks his captain if Sun Jian managed to escape. At the same time, Lubu comes toward him while carrying a head. This head belongs to Sun Jian, and the soldiers become more excited after seeing the head of their main enemy, and they start praising Lubu. Huashong gets on his knees and he starts thanking Lubu as he would be already dead if Lubu had not saved him back then. He further says that he will one day pay back this gratitude with his life. Lubu tells him there's no need for that, and he bravely stood against Sun Jian, which bought them enough time to wreak havoc in the enemy ranks, and he will be appropriately rewarded for it. Lubu is thinking that Hu Zhen is a fool who handed over an easy victory to him. Lubu further orders the soldiers to bury the deceased and return to the Yike Pass. Lubu gets a warm welcome when he gets back to the Yike Pass. Zhao Qin starts praising Lubu for his peerless victory and he orders his men to prepare a grand feast for them. Lubu seizes this chance to put all the blame on Zhao Qin. He tells Zhao Qin that Sun Jian already knew about their night raid and he was well prepared to receive them. Lubu further says that Zhao Qin is the only one who can pull it off and he has been working as an enemy spy all this time. He keeps on telling them that he is not a spy, but Huashong gets a hold of him and tells them that treason can never be forgiven. Huashong orders the guards to behead Zhao Qin and show his head to the public. Lubu appoints Wei Shu, who is the brother of his wife, as the lord of Yike Pass in place of Zhao Qin. But Wei Shu is not confident enough to take over such a big position. Lubu assures him that Yike is a place where no war will be fought anytime soon, and he can take this as a chance to train his leadership skills. Wei Shu thanks Lubu for giving him such a big opportunity. Lubu spent 12 years in the simulation world and now he is longing to meet his daughter and wife. After a few days, Lubu arrives at Luoyang. There he meets Wen Yuan, who informs him that Hu Zhen already reported to the Chancellor-in-Chief that Lubu didn't follow commands and disrupted the army, which caused them to suffer heavy losses at the hands of Sun Jian. Lubu starts laughing and Wen Yuan says that Lubu is so relaxed, so it means he already has something up his sleeve. Lubu shows him a bag and he tells Wen Yuan that this bag is enough to prove that Hu Zhen is an idiot of higher caliber. Meanwhile, in the Chancellor-in-Chief residence, Hu Zhen got a report that Lubu is back and he starts badmouthing him. He further tells the Chancellor-in-Chief that they lost this war to Sun Jian because of him, and he should be severely punished for this. The Chancellor-in-Chief is a cunning person and he tells Hu Zhen that Lubu is now his son, and he even granted him a legendary horse, so he will not do anything before hearing his side of the story. Hu Zhen again tells him that he should seize this chance to get rid of Lubu, but Chancellor-in-Chief says that Lubu alone is more stronger than 10 of Hu Zhen, and there must be a reason for the things he did. At the same time, a scout arrives who informs them that Lubu achieved a great victory. He reports that Lubu has beheaded Sun Jian along with 3 of his generals, and Sun Jian's army has retreated 100 miles away from Yike. Chancellor-in-Chief asks Hu Zhen that this report is different from what he just said, and Hu Zhen says that the army of Lubu didn't even exceed 1,000 men, and this must be fake intel. At the same time, Lubu steps inside the residence and he throws the bag. The bag lands in front of Hu Zhen so everyone can see its contents. The head of Sun Jian is visible to everyone, which proves everything Hu Zhen reported before was fake. Dongzhou confirms himself that it is indeed the head of Sun Jian. Lubu gets on his knees and he greets his godfather Dongzhou. Hu Zhen becomes afraid as he wanted to put all the blame of this loss on Lubu, and Dongzhou is happy and he says that Lubu will get a big reward for this contribution. Hu Zhen starts bad-mouthing Lubu and he says that they lost too many soldiers for this small victory, and Lubu should be punished for it. Dongzhou warns Hu Zhen to get out of his sight before he gets his head chopped off, and Hu Zhen starts running for his dear life. Dongzhou asks his advisor Wen Yo about what they should give to Lubu as his reward. Wen Yo says that Lubu can be rewarded with women, alcohol, and gold. Dongzhou says that this reward seems too stingy and maybe they should give him a title. Wen Yo says that Lubu already accomplished a lot of military feats and he was already promoted to a lieutenant rank with a marquis title. Lubu knows well that the most he can get is an upper marquis title, which can make the higher-ups in the court uneasy. That's why Wen Yo is trying to warn him to step back a bit. Lubu tells his godfather that he needs no title and they should reconsider his reward. Dongzhou compliments Lubu for restraining himself. He further tells Lubu that if he keeps on moving up the ranks, it will be bad for him because other generals won't like it, but he still promises to promote him after the war is over. Dongzhou orders Wen Yo to prepare the rewards for Lubu. Wen Yo says that he will get to it right away, and Lubu thinks to himself that if he gets a chance, he will strangle this poisonous bastard Wen Yo. During the same night at Lubu's residence, his wife tells him that the Prime Minister is holding a banquet, and why he didn't stay at the Prime Minister residence. Lubu tells her that he made an excuse that he was tired from fighting and he needed some rest. His wife further asks him if he's in danger. Lubu tells her that he is a strong man and his enemies are the ones who are in danger. His wife says that his eyes look more brighter than before, and he has changed after this war. They both look at each other with love, as the effects of alcohol are kicking in. After a 30-second session of love, Lubu goes to sleep. During his sleep, he starts getting teleported to the system space. After some time, he again appears naked in the system space. The photon system informs him that he can choose a world scenario for himself. Lubu asks the system if he can enter other worlds aside from the last one. The system informs him that there are many worlds aside from his world, and the simulator can completely copy other worlds for the player to enjoy. All simulation worlds come from different times and have very different themes, and Life of a Farmer was just one of them. Lubu now understands that he can reincarnate into different worlds, but there are still too many regrets from the last one. Lubu asks the system if he can repeat the last life, and the system starts downloading it. A system shop opens up and he currently has 28 simulator coins. Before reincarnation, he can purchase starting traits to enhance the experience. With that said, Lubu starts browsing through the simulator shop. Lubu only has 28 points, while most of the skills require over 1,000 points. Lubu starts moving below and more skills with less point requirements start popping up. But most of these lower point skills look more like punishments. Lubu informs the system to move ahead as he will not be buying anything. A bright light flashes and the system informs him that the life of a farmer will start now. After some time, he again gets reborn into the Lu house in Qian Dynasty. He is back and this time he is laughing instead of getting confused like last time. We then skip to the day where Lubu came back with a rabbit and the village chief was waiting for him in the warehouse. Lubu is 12 years old at this point and he tells the village chief that it's late right now and he will hand over his share the next morning. The next morning, Lubu heads over to the chief mansion to get the weight of the rabbits. He then hands over half of the rabbit's meat to the chief, and the chief gets too much happy. Chief praises his father for raising a good and honest son like him, and he further tells him to go back and wait for another good news from him. When he comes back, his father seems overjoyed. His father informs him that the village chief cut down their tax this year by 122 kilograms, and since they just had a big harvest, they can live a comfortable life this year. His sister and mom are overjoyed after hearing this because they don't need to worry about starving this year. Back then, Lubu could solve everything with his peerless combat prowess. That's why he always hated socializing. But he don't have much prowess in this life, and it's better to live as a commoner in here. The intelligence of Lubu increases by 2 points, and his family can't thank him enough for the hard work he did for them. The next day, Lubu is moving through the market, and a seller asks him if he's going for hunting again, and Lubu replies with a yes. The local bullies were also present close by, and they were spectating him. One of the bullies says that Lubu is doing amazing work right now with his unparalleled archery skills, and the bully leaders tells him that Lubu is no big deal as they had beaten him when they were kids, and they can do it again if they want to. The fat bully asks them if they should enlist in the army as soldiers, and the bully leader informs them that they are not made for war, and they will die within few days on the battlefield. At the gates of the village, some soldiers are trying to recruit the villagers with promises of fake glory and honor. When Lubu is moving through the gates, one of the guards calls him out. The guard tells him that men should go to the battlefield and fight for the country so they can make a name for themselves. He further informs him that the imperial court is recruiting soldiers, and Lubu looks completely fine for this job. Lubu remembers that he is the same guard who advised him to live a good life next time before beheading him. Lubu starts thinking if he should really live a peaceful life in this village, or enlist in the army to bring honor to his family. After thinking for a while, Lubu agrees to enlist in the army because he is missing his old days of carnage on the battlefield. The guard asks him for his name, and Lubu informs him to remember his name well, because in a few years, this name will be famous throughout the country. After a few years, Lubu stabs an enemy soldier on the battlefield. The soldier curses him before dropping dead on the battlefield. Lubu's strength has increased up to 17, but he is still not as strong as he was in his previous life, and he's barely hanging on to his life. Lubu fought in 10 wars of different scales, and he almost died several times, but he is still lowest in the hierarchy. 2 soldiers try to slash Lubu, but he dodges their slashes by ducking down. He then retaliates by stabbing them both to death. Both soldiers drop dead on the ground, but it is still not over yet as more soldiers rush toward him. Lubu snaps due to overload on his brain, and he challenges them all to come at him at once. After a few hours, sounds of swords clashing stop as the crows start eating the dead bodies of the deceased soldiers. Some soldiers are talking about how they just barely survived due to Lubu, and they are celebrating their victory with water instead of wine. A newbie soldier asks another about the origin of Lubu, as he is stronger than all of them, and he killed more enemies than all of them combined. The veteran soldiers tells him that Lubu is a legendary marksman, and there was a time when their platoon leader's mistake led them to a muddy situation. Although they managed to break through the surrounding enemies, but Lubu lost 2 fingers in the process. That's why he is now working as a paladin, but even now he can kill hundreds of enemy soldiers. The newbie asks them that Lubu has such amazing capabilities, but why he has not been promoted to a higher position. The veteran soldier tells him that everyone in their platoon knows well about his accomplishments, and their platoon leader is jealous of Lubu. That's why he keeps plotting against him. Soldiers comes right next to Lubu, and he informs him that their platoon leader called for him. Lubu tells him to go ahead, and he will follow him after finishing his meal. The platoon leader orders him to lure the enemy this time, and he made him a leader of 10 soldiers. Lubu informs him that it's an impossible mission which could lead to his death. The platoon leader is not trying to hide his jealousy, and he tells Lubu to go on this mission and die, or he can just disregard his military command and be beheaded right here for insubordination. Lubu informs him that in 7 years he has fought in over 67 battles, and he always charged at the front every time. He has killed 367 enemies, including 13 commanders, and in terms of merit, he is more than enough to replace him as the troop leader. Lubu has enough of his crap. Even after all of this time, he has been promoted to a leader of 10-man troop, and he is given an impossible task by him. Lubu cuts off both of his arms as he cannot bear this injustice anymore, and there is now no need to suppress his inner desire to climb the ranks. Both hands of the platoon leader fall on the ground, and he starts crying out loud because of unbearable pain. The guards come inside after hearing the cries of their platoon leader. Lubu turns back and he tells them to listen carefully to what he is about to say. He informs them that their platoon leader wanted to retreat, knowing well that the northern tribes are arriving. He was about to sacrifice his whole platoon to make his escape so he can continue being an officer somewhere else. Lubu asks both of them if they don't think he deserves to die. The platoon leader shouts at them to not listen to this traitor and carry out the punishment. Lubu pulls up his sword as he walks toward them, and he tells them that being the close guards of the platoon leader, both of them will be killed for failing in carrying out their responsibilities. Lubu completely unsheathes his sword, as he has no worry about getting hurt. As he is about to exit the camp, he tells them that either way, they will be killed, and they should make their own judgment. The guards know well what Lubu just said is true, as their platoon leader was using them all of this time as pawns to build up his own credit. Lubu comes out of the camp and everyone present outside can hear the cries for help coming out from inside. The whole platoon is stunned as their leader is getting killed while calling them for help. Lubu tells all of them that their platoon leader was incompetent, and he was not honorable enough to be respected by his soldiers. Lubu has already committed a grave sin by replacing the platoon leader with himself. Lubu tells them that he will stay right here, and those who don't want to obey his commands can cut a wound on his body and run for their lives. Those who are willing to obey him must enter the camp and inflict a wound on the body of their incompetent leader, and after, they will be brothers for life from now on. And if they manage to win this war, they will be free from this sin. The newbie is thinking of inflicting a wound on Lubu as his words are sensible, but this is an act of betrayal, and he has his duties as a soldier. Everyone gets alerted when the veteran soldier takes out his blade and he informs them that Lubu is right, and their leader was an eyesore who never cared about them. He further says that Lubu is much more reliable than him, and all of them are alive right now due to Lubu. All soldiers get pumped up as they know they would have died if they kept following their old platoon leader, and Lubu is a good replacement for him. Most of the soldiers head inside the camp to inflict a wound on their commander, while some soldiers still have doubts about this. One soldier says that they have no doubt about his combat prowess, but most of the soldiers are not adept as they're enemies from the northern tribes, and they also have an upper hand in terms of manpower. Lubu tells them that he is not physically strong either, but it has been incredibly easy for him to slay the opponents as he depends on courage. Courage leads to infinite potential, and with enough courage, they can all be the same as him. He shouts at them that when confrontation is unavoidable, the braver ones will always win. At the same time, Lubu gets a notification that his reputation is increased by 2, and intellect increased by 4 points. All soldiers get pumped up and they start repeating the same words he just shouted at them. Lubu is thinking that this feeling which he got after influencing others without strength is very satisfying. During nighttime, he gets a report that the soldiers worked overnight as he ordered. They have dug 2 moats outside the walls. The catapults are also ready. Lubu compliments him for the good job and he tells him to go back for now. Lubu is thinking that the northern tribes are different from them, as they are grouped according to their clans. Collective honor is their top priority, and the strongest clans always charge at the very front. This way, they get a head start in looting. If they can manage to defeat the renowned big clans, the other clans' morale will definitely be devastated. As for his side, a trap is definitely required considering their lack of manpower, and for the trap to be effective, a troop must be dispatched in order to lure the main forces of the opponents all the way to where the trap lies. But unfortunately, there would be no way back for the dispatched troop. He remembers the words of Sun Jian, who told him that only the winner stands tall, as every method must be considered to achieve victory. Lubu is thinking what Sun Jian said was right, and he would have made the same choice if he was in his place. A soldier comes in and Lubu orders him to round up the elderly and weak ones in a single platoon. They are to be used as bait at the front lines. Whether they survive or not is up to their luck. Soldier tells him that some of these men are from his previous troop and what he should do about them. Lubu orders him to send them to the front lines as well. The next morning, the elderly and weak units from the platoon are placed on the front lines. The northern tribal army is rushing toward them in full force. The newbie asks them how they are even going to block their charge, and the veteran soldier tells him that Lubu made them stand at the front lines without shields, as he is clearly using them as baits to lure out the enemy. The veteran soldier curses Lubu as he has been through thick and thin with him, and he just sent them to the death's door without any care. He further says that he was the one who supported him first when he took over as the platoon leader. He shouts out that Lubu is worse than the previous troop leader, and there will be a day when he will fall from grace and get betrayed by everyone. The newbie is thinking that in wars like these, the compassion, morality, and their lives have no meaning at all. After a few minutes, the northern tribes clash with the front platoon of Lubu's unit. The frontal platoon starts getting shredded to pieces as they don't even have their shields with them to defend properly against the enemy. The northern tribes thinks that their enemies are very weak and they start charging on ahead without thinking much. Lubu is thinking that right now the enemies are all intoxicated with the will to kill, and it's exactly what he wanted. Lubu starts rushing toward the enemies and he orders his troops to do the same. One of the enemy commanders is quite happy with his easy kills, but his expression changes when he realizes that he is about to get cut with a sword. Without giving him any time to retaliate, Lu Bu beheads him in a single strike. Another enemy soldier tries to stab him, but Lu Bu ducks down to one side of his horse. Lu Bu then beheads the soldier before he can retaliate. Lu Bu is scanning the whole battlefield to find out the location of this tribe's chief. He soon finds out a horseman who has a halberd instead of a sword. Lu Bu quickly heads toward him while he is busy with his soldiers. Lu Bu tries to stab him with his sword, but the leader dodges his attack in time. Lu Bu says that he has a nice horse, as it can help him escape later on. The leader is pissed at him for striking him from the back like a coward. The leader slashes his sword in two with a powerful strike while Lu Bu dodges his attack. Without wasting any time, Lu Bu jumps toward him. Lu Bu strikes him with his sword, but the leader blocks his attack with the handle of his halberd. The leader utilizes his force to push Lu Bu back. He then retaliates by attacking Lu Bu with his halberd, and Lu Bu barely manages to block his attack. The force behind his attack was so fierce that he almost broke through the sword of Lu Bu. Lu Bu quickly kicks the side of the face of his horse. The horse raises both of his frontal legs, which unstables the position of the northern tribe leader, and Lu Bu jumps toward him. Lu Bu quickly chops off his head with one decisive strike to his neck. The northern tribesmen get alerted as they now know their leader is dead. Lu Bu takes a hold of the horse of their leader and he orders his troops to retreat. With that said, they start galloping away from the battlefield while their enemies give chase. A platoon of Lu Bu is stationed far away from the field with catapults, and they can hear loud voices in the distance. On closer inspection, it turns out to be Lu Bu who is retreating back to their position with his cavalry. One of their commanders tells them to snap out of their daydreaming as the northern tribes have already entered their shooting range. The soldiers quickly cut off the ropes on the catapults, and a lot of big rocks gets launched up into the air toward the direction of the northern tribe. The northern tribe soldiers start spouting curses at Lu Bu's platoon as they get hit by rocks. Lu Bu already planned it out, and he knows well that this will have little effect on such a big army, and his main objective is not to kill them. The formation of enemy cavalry gets altered as they try to dodge the falling rocks and they attempt to go around the carnage. After some time, they start falling into the trap Lu Bu lovingly prepared for them. The moat is so big that the entire enemy army can be dropped into it, and the cries of the soldiers along with their horses can be heard from afar as they fall down and get stabbed by wooden stakes placed on the bottom of the moat. The cavalrymen at the front try to stop their horses, but the huge number of cavalry behind them had no idea about the moat, so they keep on pushing forward. The cavalrymen keep on falling to their gruesome deaths, but soon after some time, a commander realizes something. A cavalryman informs his commander that their men in front have just disappeared without any trace. Their commander thinks that their enemies are using sorcery to vanish their soldiers, so he orders his men to retreat. The soldiers under Lu Bu command get overjoyed with happiness as they just won an impossible battle. The men under Lu Bu's command start praising him for his tactics. One after another, they all start getting down on their knees. They all say in unison that Lu Bu is the reincarnation of God of War, and they will be loyal to him till death. Lu Bu is thinking that not even millions of soldiers would compare to a suicide squad like this, and they will be his loyal supporters in the future. Lu Bu gets a notification that his reputation has increased by 10 points. Night falls and Lu Bu is resting in his camp. Lu Bu is thinking that he just got lucky because he had no idea that the northern tribesmen will become afraid after coming across a trap. He has to use his brain more often in this world as he is physically weak. At the same time, Lu Bu gets a notification that his intellect has increased by 5. There is a lot of commotion outside and soldiers comes inside to inform him that they are doomed. He further elaborates that a large platoon of soldiers is heading their way and it must be a counterattack from the northern tribes. Lu Bu orders the guards to stop the commotion and pick 30 elite warriors to recon with him. After some time, they reach the place where the troops were spotted, and this time, their numbers are much larger than before. Lu Bu tells his men to carefully check the armor of these soldiers. On a second glance, they can clearly see that these soldiers belong to the elite cavalry of Daqian. The elite cavalry surrounds Lu Bu and his men from both sides. Lu Bu orders his men to stay still no matter what. The leader of the elite cavalry, General Yan Changkong, asks them that he got a report that the northern army will be invading today, but the whole atmosphere around here seems too quiet. Lu Bu gets on his knees and informs General Yan that the northern tribes have been defeated by the border guards. One of the commanders under General Yan doubts the claims of Lu Bu as the northern tribes consisted of tens of thousands of people, while the border's guards were poorly equipped and they had hardly a couple of hundred men. General Yan is doubtful as well, so he asks Lu Bu if he has a proof for his claim. Lu Bu tells them that his proof lies in the 2 moats beside him, and they can check for themselves. The whole foundation of the moat is filled with the dead bodies of northern tribesmen and their horses. General Yan gets shocked after watching the dead bodies littered inside the moats. General Yan asks for his name and Lu Bu introduces himself to the general. After some years, Lu Bu is training some soldiers in an open field. He is now 22 years old and his skill points have also risen by a big margin. At the same time, 2 high-ranked officials are eating food on the walls. One official asks the other why he's roasting meat while the rest of the troops are training. The official replies by saying that Lu Bu can't order him around like ordinary soldiers because he has no connection in the royal court. And he asks the other official if he knows how Lu Bu jumped ranks and became the garrison general. The first official states that Lu Bu blocked a big invasion of the northern tribes with only a couple hundred men and received a lot of praise in wars after that. The second official informs him that if he has not heard that Lu Bu killed his superior when he was a common soldier. The second official smacks him with his helmet and he warns him to quiet his blabbering or General Yan will cut out his tongue. After the training session, Lu Bu gets summoned by General Yan. Lu Bu says he is sorry for being late, but General Yan tells him that it's fine because he works hard to train the soldiers. General Yan further compliments him by saying that his training methods made the soldiers so strong that the northern tribes don't even dare to attack them anymore. Lu Bu says that there is no need to praise him as he's just doing his job. General Yan gets to the point and he informs Lu Bu that he summoned him today to arrange a marriage for him. Lu Bu is at the same age as his daughter and he's young and competent as well, so he thinks Lu Bu is best fit for his daughter. Lu Bu glances at the daughter of General Yan and she seems to be blushing as she likes Lu Bu as well. Lu Bu tells General Yan that he appreciates the thought but he do not dare to accept his offer. This pisses off General Yan's daughter and she unsheathes her sword. She then points out her sword at Lu Bu in anger and asks him why he don't want to marry her. We then see a flashback of 3 years ago where a young kid was sparring against a swordsman. This young kid turns out to be Shui, the daughter of General Yan. Shui manages to disarm her sparring partner with a strong slash attack. The instructor compliments Shui for her skill with the sword. The spectators start praising her as well for the marvelous swordsplay she just showed. But Shui is not buying any of their facade as she knows well that the instructor withdrew some force before the last attack and he was going easy on her because she's the daughter of General Yan. She tells her instructor that they need to fight once again, but the instructor seems a bit hesitant. Lu Bu was also watching it and he says that the northern tribes are invading Dagian non-stop and all soldiers should be training diligently. Instead of training properly, all of them are fooling around with a girl. He tells them that if they keep on going like this, one day they'll become a sign of disgrace for General Yan's cavalry. One of the veteran soldiers asks others about this new kid. His comrades inform him that this kid is Lu Bu who came back with General Yan a few days ago, and he defeated thousands from the northern tribes with just a small platoon made up of a few hundred men. Shui asks Lu Bu why he called her a little girl, and as a daughter of General Yan, it's only natural for her to train herself to be able to kill the enemies. Lu Bu tells her that she should stay in her room if she is the daughter of General Yan, as killing enemies is the task of men. This enrages Shui and she asks Lu Bu for a match. Lu Bu turns away after saying that these stupid games are not for him. Shui asks Lu Bu if he is scared, but Lu Bu keeps on going without replying to her. This angers her a bit and she leaps toward Lu Bu to hit him from behind. Lu Bu ducks down to dodge her first slash attack. Lu Bu keeps on dodging her attacks without hitting her back. Shui performs a sword stab attack and Lu Bu leaps to the side to dodge it. Lu Bu then kicks a sword which was already in the ground and it hits the sword of Shui and her sword gets thrown high up in the sky. Lu Bu then quickly grabs the sword in mid-air. Lu Bu points the sword at Shui and asks her if she had enough fun. The crowd gets agitated after watching an upstart like Lu Bu pointing his sword at the daughter of their general. A soldier begs Lu Bu to lower his sword, but Lu Bu tells them to listen well as wars are not games and reality is extremely cruel. No one sympathizes with others during wars because of their status. Lu Bu further tells her that she could have been killed 100 times if she was to step onto the battlefield. Lu Bu starts leaving after telling her to stay in her room if she don't have the resolution to die. The old veteran soldiers start bad-mouthing Lu Bu as he leaves, but Shui on the other hand has developed some feelings for Lu Bu. A few days later, 2 horns are blown on the castle walls to alert everyone about a special event. Lu Bu seems to be heading outside with some soldiers for some reason. Shui asks the veteran about where Lu Bu is heading and he tells Shui that a general from the northern tribe sent them a challenge letter last night with the aim of breaking their spirits. General Yan didn't know who to send, so all of the people in the court recommended Lu Bu and he agreed to accept the challenge. Hu Batolin is one of the strongest warriors of northern tribes, and many generals perished at his hands. It's a certain death to take him one-on-one. The veteran tells Shui that they made Lubu to fight in this impossible battle because he disrespected Shui, and now he will atone for it with his life. But Shui is not happy with their plot, and she starts running toward her father. The guard stationed outside General Yan's room tells her that General Yan is busy watching the fight, and he can't see her right now. General Yan, who is hearing the ruckus outside, asks her daughter why she's making all this commotion. Shui asks her father to take back his orders and not let Lubu fight. General Yan reminds her that military orders are not something simple, and they can't be taken back so lightly. But Shui is still persistent as she tries to convince her father. Shui sits down right in front of him and she tells him that she refuses to go back until he takes his order back. But all of a sudden, they hear a lot of sounds coming from outside. General Yan is thinking that the commotion happened too fast, and Lubu was not so weak to get defeated in this short span of time. But when he looks outside, it turns out that the northern tribesmen are carrying the dead body of their general. Both General Yan and Shui become a bit shocked after witnessing it. They get alerted when they hear Lubu's voice, who says that he is here to report. Lubu heads toward General's room and he informs him that he has fulfilled his task and brought back Hu Batolin's head. Lubu throws Hu Batolin's head on the ground and the blood coming out of his head gets soaked into the wood. General Yan congratulates Lubu for accomplishing such a big task despite being here for a few days. He further informs him that his daughter was worried for him, and he asks her how they shall reward him. Shui gets flustered and she shouts at them that there should be no reward given for such an easy task. She starts running away from the scene because she's blushing, and General Yan starts laughing out loud. After 1 year, two officials are discussing how reports are coming in that Lubu has killed every single enemy from the northern tribes in the last war. The veteran soldier asks him how did Lubu achieve such a big victory. The other official informs the veteran that Lubu is returning soon, and they can find out about that in detail after he returns. Shui was secretly listening to their discussion, and now she knows Lubu is returning. After a few hours, Lubu returns back to the border gate. There are a lot of soldiers and common people present there to welcome him. Lubu glances at Shui and she turns her face down as her face becomes red. General Yan is quite happy with Lubu and he appoints Lubu as the garrison general. From that day on, Lubu personally started training the army. One day he noticed Shui training in the field along with other soldiers. Lubu grabbed her and started dragging her away, and he told her once more that she's not made for the battlefield. Lubu tells her to head back immediately as General Yan should not have noticed yet, but Shui is adamant on fighting heroically in the battlefield along with him. Lubu tells her that he will punish her according to the military law if she keeps on being stingy like this, and Shui tells him to go on ahead. Lubu has enough of her crap and he points his sword toward her. Lubu tells her that she's being a nuisance on his side, and if not for her father, he would have already thrown her out. Shui starts crying and running away after dropping her sword. Now in the present, Shui is pointing her sword at Lubu after he rejected to marry her. Lubu tells her that the northern tribes are still lurking outside and he can die any day in a war, so he cannot marry her. Shui tells him that if he dies on the battlefield, she will die along with him, but Lubu tells her that he already has a wife and daughter at home who are waiting for him, so he cannot betray them. Shui starts crying as usual, and she knows well that he is lying because he has not returned home ever since he enlisted at the age of 12. Once again, she runs away from the room. Lubu begs General Yan for his forgiveness, but General Yan says it's alright and his daughter is being persistent like this from her childhood. General Yan says that he enlisted at the age of 12 and it has been 10 long years since he last saw his parents. General Yan tells him to take a leave for some days and spend some time with his parents. And in the meantime, Shui will be able to cool down, and Lubu accepts the offer of the general without any question. Few days later, Shui is sitting quietly while her guards are worried about her. The veteran informs them that General Yan wanted to promote Lubu, that's why he tried to arrange the marriage. He further tells them that nobles fear that outsiders can betray them, that's why they prefer kinship above all. General Yan wanted to hand over a higher position to Lubu, and the imperial court would not allow the promotion of a lowly commoner. The veteran further says that Lubu should not have given up on this opportunity. After a few days, Lubu arrives at his village. The whole village is gathered outside to welcome their hero. Lubu is feeling a bit awkward as he had brutally killed all of these villagers in his last life. The village chief starts praising him for making them proud by killing so many northern tribesmen. He further informs Lubu that the imperial court even reduced the tax on the village by 10%. He informs others that from today onwards, Lubu will be his foster son. Lubu asks the chief about his parents, and the chief tells him that he told them to wait for Lubu at their new house. When Lubu arrives at his new house, he is not even able to recognize it. His sister has grown up well, and she comes up to greet him. Lubu is glad to see his sister Lin Qi grown up. Lin Qi is too happy to see her brother after such a long time, and she hugs Lubu. Lubu says that she has grown up so much in this time and she could barely recognize her. Lin Qi informs him that her mother sent her for grocery shopping so they can celebrate his return. She further informs Lubu that their parents wanted to receive him at the village entrance, but the village chief told them to wait at home. After meeting Lubu, his mom starts crying because his son has so many scars on his body, while his father is thankful that he returned back in one piece. His mother complains to his father that he's being heartless, and his father tells her to not be so much short-sighted as their son suffered all of those injuries for this country. Lubu's father heads outside to take some fresh air. It turns out he was just acting, and he's also sad because their son suffered a lot in these years. After some time, they start eating together and chatting over food. His father tells him that they have been living a good life because he keeps on sending so much money to them. Now, his father has only one concern, as he wants to see his kid get married. Lubu's mom informs him that every family with a daughter is rushing to arrange a marriage with Lubu. After eating, Lubu decides to stroll around to check what has changed around the village. The three thugs from back then have grown up and they are collecting taxes from the shopkeepers. They want a shopkeeper to pay his taxes in a few days or the village chief will have his way with him. The bullies get shocked after watching Lubu heading toward them and they greet him. Lubu, without replying back to them, keeps on going his way. The bully leader is a bit skeptical and he tells them to stay away from Lubu as he can sense a beast inside him which can snap at any time. He further tells them that Lubu now seems more like an old calm phantom, but it can be all a hoax. 5 days later, Lubu is strolling through the market. Two soldiers come to greet him. Lubu asks them why they are here, and they inform him that the northern tribes started invading them after they received the information that Lubu is absent from the border. The northern tribes are planning a big invasion with a 1,000,000-man army. In a few days, Lubu arrives at the border and he greets General Yan. General Yan says that he came on the perfect time and he hands over total control of the army to him. General Yan says that he hopes that Lubu will not disappoint him, and if he is able to win this war, General Yan will personally recommend him to the imperial court. Lubu tells him to not worry as he will devote everything to this war. After a few days, both massive armies come face to face on the battlefield. Lubu is chopping off all enemies like paper. Lubu is rampaging through the battlefield by beheading all enemies on his way. He keeps on slaying enemies, but their number is still very large. Lubu gets alerted after hearing a familiar voice. He looks around and it turns out to be Shui Yan who just chopped off a soldier's arm. Lubu heads over to her and he asks her what she's doing in here. Without replying back to him, Shui rushes on ahead. Shui Yan slashes off an enemy soldier in two with all of her might. All of a sudden, a stray arrow moves toward her, but Lubu catches her in time, which saves her life. Both of them fall down from their horses, and Shui asks Lubu why he keeps on bothering her. But before Lubu can reply, a horseman gets ready to cleave him into two halves. Before he can land a hit on him, Shui Yan pushes Lubu on the side, and we see a lot of blood splattered on the ground. After the war is over, two exhausted officials are sitting near the walls and they are happy that they made it alive. The veteran says that he was not expecting Lubu to beat the northern tribes, but unfortunately the life of their lady is still in danger. While Shui Yan is getting treated, Lubu and the rest of the soldiers are waiting outside for their general. They all get alerted when they hear the cries of the general who is begging his daughter to open her eyes. Lubu has never heard General Yan sound like that before and he's thinking something worse must have happened. After some time, General Yan comes out and he's not looking well. General Yan announces that his daughter, Shui Yan, just passed away. He angrily orders Lubu to hand over the commander's seal and return back to his hometown. Lubu's left-hand man gets up and he reminds General Yan that Lubu just achieved a huge feat after defeating the northern tribes, and General Yan promised to recommend him to the imperial court if he won this war. He begs General Yan to think it again as his decision can demoralize the whole army. General Yan is disappointed in how Lubu disciplines his men, and he tells Lubu that he heard a rumor that back then he became the platoon leader after killing the previous one. And now he's witnessing signs of rebellion as if Lubu is trying to take over his position. General Yan orders his men to drag out the left-hand man of Lubu and behead him. The left-hand man says that if it wasn't for Lubu replacing their previous useless leader, all of their platoon would have perished under the swords of the northern tribes. He further informs General Yan that he owes his life to Lubu and it's only right for him to die for Lubu. But the young lady acted on her own and her demise has got nothing to do with Lubu. He tells General Yan that he is acting just like their previous useless leader. With that said, the whole army gets ready to attack General Yan and his loyalists at a single order of Lu Bu. There is complete silence on the field for a moment as Lu Bu is silent and they keep on waiting for his command. General Yan warns them that they will not get away this time just like they did back then. The right-hand man says that they don't care about their lives anymore as the word of Lu Bu is the only command they need. Lu Bu screams at them to stop this nonsense at once. Lu Bu informs General Yan that his men are not in the right state of mind because they just came back after fighting a long battle, and he says that he will follow his order obediently if he lets his men go free and treat them well in the future. General Yan agrees to his request and Lu Bu goes away after saying that he will never step foot on the border in the future. After that, 38 years pass by and the Lu village has been developed a lot in this time. Lu Bu has grown old and his grandkids are paying respect to him. His sons and daughters prepared gifts for his birthday. Lu Bu is 60 years old now and he gained quite a lot of reputation. His wife tells him to smile a little bit because it's his 60th birthday. But Lu Bu says that he would have become happy if even a single one of his kids had went to the army and brought honor to their household. A servant comes inside to inform Lu Bu that a woman came to the village and she's asking for him and she's being escorted by a lot of soldiers. Lu Bu heads outside to greet the guests who are waiting for him on the outskirts of the village. Lu Bu knows these soldiers belong to General Yan and he asks the woman why she's looking for him. The woman knows him well and she quickly points her sword on the face of Lu Bu. Lu Bu remembers that Shui Yan did the same thing once in the past and he asks her how she is alive. Shui Yan tells him that this is not the right place to talk and they should head inside the carriage. As Shui Yan removes her mask, she informs Lu Bu that she didn't suffer from any fatal injuries in the past. It was just that her face was scratched. She further tells him that there was a different reason why her father made up that lie and why he made Lu Bu hate him. But Lu Bu informs her that he has no hatred towards General Yan. Shui Yan tells Lu Bu to shut up and listen to the full story. Back then, the doctor told General Yan that there are no life-threatening concerns, but her face is ruined. General Yan asks her why she did this horrendous thing, and Shui Yan informs him that she always loved Lu Bu, but General Yan arranged a marriage between her and Jiang Tianyi, who she hates. That's why she don't want to live anymore. General Yan informs her that food and weapons are crucial in a war, and Jian Tian's father is the Imperial Secretary of War, who is trying to force them into this situation. That's why he cannot deny to his request. General Yan wanted to request the Emperor to command Lu Bu to marry her, because he cannot reject an imperial order and Shui Yan is the foster daughter of the Emperor. But now that her face is scarred, the Emperor will be furious and the Imperial Secretary of War would also hold a grudge against Lu Bu. Even with such a big feat, Lu Bu's death is already fated. Shui Yan thinks it's all her fault, but General Yan says the fault lies with him, as he should have told her earlier. Shui Yan says that she will exchange her life for Lu Bu, but General Yan tells her it is not possible. Then General Yan comes up with this plan, and he thinks informing Lu Bu about it is not good, and given his impulsive nature, he can do something stupid. General Yan tells Shui Yan to play dead, and he will use her death as an excuse to remove Lu Bu from his position, so he will never have to deal with the imperial court. General Yan gives his daughter a piece of advice that if she wants Lu Bu to live, then she has to play dead and never meet Lu Bu ever again. Lu Bu was wrong about General Yan all this time, and he asks Shui Yan about the current whereabouts of General Yan. Shui Yan informs him that her father recently passed away, although he was not punished directly, but the blame he received from the imperial court increased tremendously. As a result, the amount of provisions and weapons they received became lower and lower. Gradually, these unending concerns made General Yan's health even more worse, and even in his dreams he kept on mumbling that if Lu Bu was still here, the northern tribes would have no place to hide. General Yan wrote a letter before his death, and he tasked her to deliver it to Lu Bu. The letter stated that, "In our lives, there are a lot of things with which we feel dissatisfied. Not even the Emperor can escape from this dissatisfaction. As Great Gian's nation's courtier for 3 generations, I have witnessed the rise and fall of the empire. I was once hot-blooded and reckless as well. Looking at Lu Bu always reminded me of the younger version of myself. I wanted a good peaceful life for you. But the empire is in great danger, and I have no choice but to task you a final mission." Lubu runs out after reading the letter and he asks his sons to ready his horse as he needs to head to the north gate right now. His son and grandson cannot understand why he needs to go there since today is his birthday. Lubu shouts at them to ready his horse right now and his wife tells his son to do as their father is saying. With that said, Lubu starts riding out toward the north gate with Shui Yan. He stops near General Yan's grave to pay his respects to him. Lubu tells General Yan to not worry as he's prepared to die for this nation in his place. Lubu asks his fellow generals if they are willing to follow him into the battle. All soldiers shout out loud that they are willing to follow him till their deaths. Lubu asks Shui Yan to give him the golden armor of General Yan. Shui Yan asks Lubu if she can fight alongside with him this time. Lubu gives her permission to join the war. After a few days, both humongous armies clash with each other on the battlefield. Lubu and Shui Yan are cutting through the ranks of northern tribesmen. All of a sudden, Shui Yan's heart gets pierced by a stab attack from a spear. This distraction becomes lethal for Lubu as his neck gets sliced by a stray blade. Lubu falls down to the ground and his neck starts bleeding. Lubu gets surrounded in a stampede of enemy cavalry and one of the horses stomps on his face, killing him in the process. After his death, Lubu wakes up in the system space and he seems to be crying. Lubu received 35 final status points because he became a general who commanded over tens of thousands of people. His final reputation is 69 because the whole empire knew about his feats and even the northern tribes hailed him as a great warrior. Lubu received a lot of rewards after climbing the ladder, but he spent it all on the well-being of others instead of squandering them for himself. His final wealth could not grow much because of his nature of helping others with his personal wealth, and now his final wealth points are 23. As Lubu aged, his strength got weaker, that's why he received 19 strength points. His intellect is 25 because there were some flaws in his actions, but he still accomplished many things with his wisdom alone. Overall, Lubu received an ending of a heroically sacrificed and final rating of A. This time, the rating of Lubu has increased by a big margin, and the system starts analyzing the final results along with his rewards. Lubu received 1,296 virtual coins, plus he can choose one out of 3 talents to strengthen his physique permanently. These options include velocity, retentive memory, and level 1 liver strengthening. Lubu makes up his mind and he chooses the liver strengthening as his reward. With that said, the system starts strengthening his liver. The system informs him that the attributes acquired during this simulation will now be inherited by him in the real life, and after analyzing his complete, he receives tenacity as his reward. Tenacity allows his willpower to be immovable. With that said, Lubu wakes up in his body in the real world. His wife asks him why he has woken up so suddenly. She further notices that his face is looking pale, like he had a nightmare. Lubu tells his wife to bring the best wine they have as he needs to visit an old friend. The next morning, Lubu is sitting in front of a grave. Wen Yuan arrives there, but Lubu was not expecting him to come. Wen Yuan says Lubu killed Ding Yuan last year on the exact same date, and he's the one who should not have came here. But Lubu says that his foster father was a great general as well, but no one seems to care about him after his death. Wen Yuan sits down right next to him, and he asks him if he just said that to humiliate him, or if he really is feeling some regret. Lubu tells him that Ding Yuan pulled him over to his side, but he kept reducing his power at the same time in fear of his capabilities, and if Lubu had acted, it was just a matter of time before he was killed. But maybe Lubu was wrong at that time and Ding Yuan just wanted to check his perseverance. Lubu is having doubts about his decision, that's why he came here to pay his respects. Wen Yuan is a bit shocked as Lubu is acting a bit different and he's showing remorse. Lubu advises Wen Yuan to do his best in assisting the Grand Chancellor to unify the lands. Wen Yuan informs Lubu that every person is against the Grand Chancellor Dongzhou, and riding on the same ship as the Grand Chancellor means they will always have to be wary of stormy waves, and this storm will only get worse from here on out. Lubu tells him that they cannot tell what will happen in the future, so they should just carry out their responsibilities as generals. It starts getting late, so both of them head back together. On their way, Lubu asks Wen Yuan if he can ask him for his help, and Wen Yuan assures him that he will help him as a brother. Lubu tells him that the Grand Chancellor will move the capital regardless of what happens in the battlefield, so he asks Wen Yuan to send his wife and daughter to Chang'an safely, and Wen Yuan tells him not to worry about them. Soon, Lubu will be fighting against coalition armies, and he's itching for their arrival. Lubu moves ahead while Wen Yuan is thinking that Lubu is always crazy for war. The next day, all generals and tacticians are present inside the Grand Chancellor's residence. Everyone stops talking after they see Lubu make his appearance in the court. Lubu gets alerted after hearing someone call out his name. A general called Ziran says that everyone became silent the moment Lubu walked in, and another general, Guo Si, says Lubu has killed Sun Jian after all. They further mock him by saying that this limelight is blinding his eyes. Hu Zhen is present there, and he says that Lubu just got lucky, and Lubu replies by saying that he is correct, and he would not have won that battle if Hu Zhen didn't baited Sun Jian towards his direction by running like a coward. He mockingly says that General Hu Zhen also deserves a reward for his cowardice. Hu Zhen tells him to stop as he only lost after falling into the trap of cunning Sun Jian. But Lubu is not letting this moment to slip by, and he again mocks him by saying that he had already alerted Hu Zhen and he should not blame Sun Jian for being cunning but himself for being an idiot. This makes Hu Zhen really furious and he unsheathes his sword, but General Ziran stops him. A guard alerts everyone about the arrival of the Grand Chancellor. Everyone greets the Chancellor as he makes his entrance in the hall. Chancellor was about to slip when he tried to sit on his chair, but his men somehow gave him support. The Grand Chancellor Dongzhou asks Xuan Pan about the edict he bought. Xuan Pan has fear in his voice and he says that he was sent here by His Majesty to deliver a message to him. Xuan Pan is trembling, but he starts reading the message, which states that GuanDong people have been rebellious since last year, and we are fortunate to have the Great Chancellor, who has unified the country and suppressed the rebellious armies. His achievements are much appreciated by the imperial court, and Great Chancellor Dongzhou will now be appointed as Grand Master, and he will lead the country's administration while unifying all lands. The emperor hopes that Dongzhou will soon suppress the feudal lord's rebellion. Dongzhou is very happy after listening to this news, and he's not even trying to hide his sinister grin. Lubu is thinking that this is the first time a Grand Master is appointed, and now he will rank above the three dukes and the feudal lords. With this rank, those who go up against him will be considered rebels, and Lubu can only think the poisonous prodigy Wen Yu must be the one who could come up with this idea. Dongzhou throws the emperor edict toward Wen Yu, and he catches it. Xuan Pan starts running after delivering the edict, and the whole hall congratulates Dongzhou for his promotion. Dongzhou starts laughing and he says that now there's nothing the emperor can do himself but to only rely on him. Dongzhou tells them that he will soon move the capital to Chang'an, but he will let the Xiliang's army mightiness shine before that. Otherwise, his enemies will think that he is on the losing end and he's retreating in fear. Wen Yu tells Dongzhou that GuanDong army has already suffered a great defeat by Lubu and they can just strike them again to prove their prowess, and Dongzhou asks his generals if anyone here is willing to fight with GuanDong army once more. Lubu is planning to wait things out and he will not act hastily, as he has already gained some achievements. Hu Zhen, Guo Si, and Ziran say that they are willing to fight in this battle. Wen Yu is a bit shocked as he was expecting Lu Bu to volunteer for this war, but his nature seems to have changed a bit in these few days. Dongzhou makes an excuse and he calls out his foster son Lu Bu. Dongzhou asks him if he wants to prove himself against the GuanDong army once again by becoming the vanguard. But Lu Bu makes an excuse by saying that many issues can arise if his achievements keep on accumulating as his position is not stable. Dongzhou starts laughing and he asks the whole hall if any one of them thinks that Lu Bu's position is not stable. Dongzhou appoints Lu Bu as the vanguard with backup from Hua Xiong and Hu Zhen. He orders them to head out to Changao immediately, and he will lead the main army by himself as Changao is a crucial military location that they cannot afford to lose. All three of them oblige to his orders immediately, and Hu Zhen is a bit pissed as Lu Bu just climbed above him in rank. After the meeting is over, everyone starts heading back. The two generals know well that Hu Zhen is a jealous person, so they come up to him and tell him that they have a plan that can ensure Lu Bu's death in this war. He immediately agrees with them and they start discussing the plan. After a few days outside the city gates, Lu Bu is having a talk with his daughter and wife as he's about to depart for war. His daughter says that she don't want to be apart from him. It reminds Lu Bu of his sister from the other world. Lu Bu promises to her that they will soon meet again, and he will buy her favorite sugar-coated haws for her. His daughter has no idea what sugar-coated haws are as they are not available in this world, and Lu Bu just forgot this fact because he spent so much time in the simulation world. Lu Bu leaves his family in the care of Wen Yuan and he tells him not to worry about their safety. After getting on the side, Wen Yuan informs Lu Bu that the army under him in this battle is not his usual elite army, and it looks like it is a mixture of two different rookie armies. Wen Yuan thinks that someone is trying to dissolve his forces of Bing and isolate Lu Bu. Lubu knows it well, and he tells Wen Yuan that every elite soldier starts off as an average soldier. Anyone trained by him is willing to give him his heart and soul. Wen Yuan says that it is getting harder to understand Lu Bu. If he had told the same thing to him before, he would have taken his halberd to the hall of the Grand Master and demanded an explanation. Lu Bu thanks Wen Yuan for his concern, and he tells him that he's becoming mature as time is passing. After some time, Lu Bu arrives at the North Army camp, but some horsemen arrived at the gates before him. The horsemen turn out to be Hu Zhen, and he informs the guards that he is here to take the commander of battle rams with him. The guards tell him to wait outside while they deliver his message. Hu Zhen ignores their request, and he starts heading inside to meet their leader. He gets a flashback of when Guo Si told him that this time the Grand Master sent only Xiliang army and the Northern army on this war, and no one from the Bing cavalry is included. Xiliang army is already under the command of Hu Zhen, which only leaves the Northern army, and if he gains authority over the Northern army, Lubu will be the commander of no one, and Hu Zhen can then easily get rid of him using his both armies. Hu Zhen is happy as he wants to kill Lubu as fast as possible, but all of a sudden some arrows are shot toward him. The arrows fall in front of his horse and it gets afraid. This in turn unbalanced Hu Zhen and he fell on the ground. His men quickly picked him up and he inquires about the traitor who just tried to shot him. Gao's son comes out and he informs Hu Zhen that no one can enter their camp without the tiger's seal. By staying away from women, wine, and bribes, Gao's son became a very distinguished figure in the army. He barely has 1,000 soldiers under his command. However, these elites known as the battle rams are capable of defeating enemies several times larger in scale, and they have truly lived up to their name. Hu Zhen is trembling with fear as he is thinking Gao's son is about to rebel, but Gao's son reminds him that anyone who trespasses in his camp without permission is considered an enemy. Gao's son orders his men to stand down, and Hu Zhen reminds him that the Grand Master ordered their army to march toward Changao with his army. Hu Zhen further says that they will be under his command, and Gao's son asks him to show the tiger's seal. Hu Zhen says that he cannot show the seal for his little army of a mere 1,000 men, but Gao's son keeps asking for the tiger's seal. Hu Zhen angrily shouts at them for disobeying the orders of a general who is above in rank than him. Lubu comes from behind and he announces that he has the tiger seal in his possession. Lubu compliments Gao's son for keeping up the military conduct of code and he pulls out the tiger seal. Gao's son takes the tiger seal off from Lubu to check its authenticity. After handing over the seal, Lubu mocks Hu Zhen for being a dimwit and ignoring the army rules. An enraged Hu Zhen shouts at him, but Lubu asks him if he has forgotten that he is now one of his subordinates. We get a flashback of how Hu Zhen previously mistreated Lubu. Lubu spares him this time because they are serving the same Grand Master, but he warns him by saying that he will chop off his head and gift it to the enemy if Hu Zhen ever tried to double-cross him again. At the same time, Gao's son matched the tiger seal of Lubu with his own, which proved that it is real. Gao's son welcomes Lubu to his army camp. Hu Zhen, who was previously trembling in fear, promises to himself that sooner or later he will make Lubu pay for this insult. The next day, after witnessing the training session of the battle rams, Lubu compliments Gao's son's men for their immovable momentum and sheer determination to die on the battlefield. Gao's son is very happy after hearing the compliment from a renowned general like Lubu. But Lubu asks Gao's son why the armor and weapons of his army is tattered. Gao's son informs Lubu that his troops have been training diligently every day, but they have been pushed aside by the Xiliang army in recent years, so it's hard for them to get their hands on new resources. After hearing about it, Lubu orders him to bring some men and follow him. He asks him to ready the transportation as well, and Gao's son asks him the reason for that. Lubu tells him that he's going to solve their equipment problem. After some time, they arrive at the Wang Fang's camp. Lubu informs the elite soldier from the battle rams that Wang Fang is Shu Rong's subordinate and he has good relationship with him, so he's planning to borrow some equipment from him. After hearing the request of Lubu, Wang Fang says that he is already in a tight spot, but Lubu tells him that he has no other choice but to borrow from him, as the trashes from the imperial court are not approving his request for resources. Wang Fang says that he knows that he's a good friend of his general, but he's asking for a big quantity. After hearing the bickering, the elite soldier remembers that Gao's son advised them that Lubu may force other camps into giving up their equipment. The battle rams feared no one, but they are taking off tomorrow so they cannot afford any accidents today. Gao's son ordered him to stop Lubu if he tries to cause any trouble. Lubu gets up and the elite soldier tries to stop him as he's thinking Lubu is gonna get into a fight. But instead of fighting, Lubu tells Wang Fang that he has an interesting offer for him, and Wang Fang says he's interested in hearing it out. Lubu tells them that GuanDong feudal lords are all rich. Even their equipment is made with nothing but shining gold, and Lubu heard that Wang Fang likes to use spears. Lubu tells him that he will bring top-tier spears smithed with wrought iron for him, and Wang Fang becomes happy after hearing it. The elite soldier is thinking that Lubu is quite different from the rumors about him. After some time, they come to an agreement and Lubu orders the elite soldier to quickly collect the weapons. Meanwhile, a storm is brewing over the city of Qingyang. Someone approaches Ben Chu, who is standing over the castle walls. This person turns out to be the infamous Chinese general Cao Cao, otherwise known as Meng De. Meng De says he cannot stay inside as it is getting quite frustrated inside and he is here for some fresh air. He further says that these feudal lords are fools as they think they can kill a grand master with curses. Ben Chu tells them that they cannot do anything else as they have been suffering losses after losses for several months. Sun Jian, who was the strongest among the feudal lords, is already dead, and now they are only left with General Geng Sun and his white cavalry. Ben Chu is a bit skeptical of whether they can win this war against the Grand Master, and he thinks he should have pushed Yuan Shu into spearheading the coalition army. But Meng De reminds him that Yuan Shu is an arrogant guy, and the coalition would have been already dissolved if he was to lead them. Meng De further asks Ben Chu if he has ever considered himself a rebel, and the expression of Ben Chu significantly changes. He further tells Ben Chu that if they keep losing the small battles, then enemy morale will rise, and in that case, everyone including both of them will die as insurgents. Ben Chu is really afraid and he asks Meng De if he has any solution. Meng De informs him that they have been losing so many wars because the feudal lords are unwilling to sacrifice their manpower, and they have never given their all on the battlefield. They need a desperate warrior to spearhead this war, but Ben Chu has no idea about where they can find such a warrior. At the same time, the two sons of Sun Jian inform Ben Chu that their father is dead. Ben Chu was already expecting a defeat, but he had no idea that his main general perished in this war. Bo Fu informs him that Xiliang army was no match for them, but everything changed once Lubu made his appearance with his Bing cavalry. They killed Sun Jian along with General Han and General Chen. No matter what they did, Lubu was completely unstoppable. Meng De starts crying and he says that Sun Jian's spirit and determination were unparalleled. Who knew he could perish so early? He faces the other side and starts crying. Ben Chu gets alerted after seeing his facial expression as Meng De is crying out loud, but in reality, he is laughing as he already knew that Sun Jian was dead. Meng De goes over to the sons of Sun Jian and he tells them to get up, as they are going to avenge Sun Jian along with all of the feudal lords. Bo Fu is very angry and he says that he will be in the vanguard in this war, as he wants to get rid of Lubu no matter the cost. Ben Chu tells him that he will lead the remaining forces of Sun Jian and more provisions will be allocated for his troops. After Sun Jian's sons leave, Ben Chu asks Meng De why he was laughing, and Meng De tells him that they were searching for a desperate warrior, and now they just found one and it is worthy of being a celebration. Next day at the entrance of Lubu's camp, both armies are getting their training from Lu Bu. Hu Zhen is also present right behind Lu Bu. They are in the open field and Hu Zhen is forced to stand there and suffer the scorching sun. Lu Bu is thinking that the battle rams are elites of the North Army as they are exceptionally disciplined and they are standing still under this scorching sun. On the other side, it did not take long for the Xiliang soldiers to topple over left and right. Their discipline is even worse than what he expected in average training sessions. Lu Bu asks Hu Zhen about the commanders of Xiliang army, but Hu Zhen tells him he has no idea as scrumptious meals are unavoidable before they step on the battlefield, and those two commanders might have drank too much yesterday. Hu Zhen is thinking that punishing a commander before a war is demoralizing for the whole army, and he's excited to see if Lu Bu still has the guts to punish those commanders. Lu Bu tells his men to beat the drum. The soldier starts beating the drum while announcing that those who do not turn up before the first strike will be flogged 40 times. Those who do not turn up before the second strike will have their bodies pierced with arrows. And as he's about to strike the drum for the third time, two commanders rush over to the field and they say they are sorry for being late. Hu Zhen asks them why they are belittling the military affairs and both of them apologize. Hu Zhen accepts their apology, but he warns them that this is their last chance. Lu Bu asks Gao Sun about the punishment given to those who do not arrive before the third strike, and Gao Sun tells him that death is the punishment for it. Lu Bu orders his men to capture both commanders as they will be punished according to the military laws. Both commanders beg Hu Zhen to save them. Hu Zhen tries to convince Lu Bu by saying that killing a subordinate right before a war will ruin everyone's morale. But Lu Bu is not buying any of his bullcrap today and he beheads one commander with a sword. The second commander starts crying out of fear for his life. Hu Zhen is quite angry at Lu Bu for killing his men, but Lu Bu says that these two commanders were having their sweet time while every Xiliang soldier was being tormented under the sun. Lu Bu handpicks two soldiers to come forward. Lubu compliments them both for having the best posture among the Xiliang soldiers, and he asks them if they don't hate being led by incompetent leaders, but both of them are hesitant to answer his question. Lubu hands over a sword to them, and he informs them that whoever kills this commander can take his position, and the one who is slower can only be a deputy. Both of them drop their spears quickly, and one of them manages to grab the sword. Without wasting any time, he leaps toward the commander and he beheads him without any second thought. Blood starts spurting out of the headless commander, and the soldier is still in shock as to what he just did in the spur of the moment. Lubu comes up from behind and compliments him for his good work, and he makes him the new commander. Lubu tells the rest of the army that his rules are simple. Violators of the military law will be severely punished, and exploits on the battlefield will be rewarded justly. Gao's son is thinking that Lubu is quite amazing, as killing commanders of an army can demoralize the army, but he then replaced them with members of their own army, which uplifted their morale. Changao is also known as Hulao Pass. Rumors has it that the Emperor Mu of Zhou used to keep the tigers offered by the commoners there. That's why some call it Hulao Pass. It is surrounded by canals and Mountain Gao connected to its west. The rocky terrain forms a solid natural barrier around it. Li Su reports to Lubu that their sentries have returned. Scouts from the opposite faction were seen lurking around the pass, and it seems like the coalition forces' operation has begun. Li Su has been in Changao for some time, so Lubu asks him how have the coalition forces been allocating their manpower. Li Su says that he has no idea, as he was merely assigned to guard the city, and scouting the enemy's layout is beyond his responsibilities. Lubu reminds him that as the gatekeeper of the Changao, it's his responsibility to perceive both his and his enemy's strength. Had the Changao not been a natural barrier, he would have long bitten the dust. Li Su becomes a bit afraid, but Lubu says that he was just pointing out his mistakes for his own good. Lubu tells Li Su to send his scouts out for scouting the surrounding areas for enemy encampments. Lubu is thinking that it was Li Su who advised him to kill Ding Yuan back then. Even if Lubu hates him for that, but he cannot blame someone else for his own final decision. Lubu orders Hua Xiong to clear the outskirts from enemies, and he agrees to it. Meanwhile, at the granary, a lot of resources are being moved there in a hurry. Yu Shi reports to Yuan Shu that a troop of Xiliang soldiers is heading in their direction. Yuan Shu asks him about the identity of the leader, and Yu Shi says that he is Hua Xiong, who previously killed Zhu Darong. Yuan Shu asks him if he is stronger than him, but Yu Shi says he has no idea, but he managed to defeat one of the 4 generals under Sun Jian. Yuan Shu motivates him by saying that the army of Sun Jian was defeated by Lubu as they are mere trashes, but they cannot defeat Yu Shi as he's one of his generals, and Yu Shi hesitantly agrees with him. Yuan Shu orders him to bring the head of Hua Xiong to him, as it will boost his position among the other feudal lords. Yu Shi knows well that he's not as strong as Sun Jian or any of the generals under him, so there are less chances for him to win this battle against their killers. But he cannot tell that to Yuan Shu that he climbed the ranks by using some petty tricks. Meanwhile, on the other side, a scout comes forward to report to Hua Xiong. The scout informs him that an opposition force is speeding toward them, but there are only a few men. Hua Xiong says that their response is quite swift, and he orders his men to march forward. Hua Xiong's army shoots a volley of arrows toward Yu Shi's army. Yu Shi orders the front row of his army to raise the shields. They raise their shields in time, but some of them are not fast enough, and they get pierced by the arrows. Yu Shi orders the men at back rows to charge forward. Both armies charge at each other at max speed, but Hua Xiong has an advantage as most of his men are on horsebacks. At last, both armies clash with each other, but the army under Yu Shi seems to be barely holding their ground. Yu Shi knows well that his Nanyang infantry has only conducted some supplementary missions, and they cannot hold back the enemies for much longer, but he still orders his men to charge forward toward their deaths while he tries to make his escape. Hua Xiong cuts down some infantrymen along with their armors. He looks toward the enemy general, but Yu Shi seems to be running away, and he tells his men to hold the enemies as he will come back with reinforcements. Without giving him any time to escape, Hua Xiong starts chasing after him. At the same time, Yuan Shu is having a feast with Wen Jie, and he tells him that Hua Xiong is nothing special. The whole battlefield is dusty, but once the dust settles, Yu Shi will bring his head. Before he can say anything else, they hear cries for help from his general Yu Shi, who asks them to open the gate. Both generals are a bit stunned as they had high hopes for Yu Shi and he's about to get cut down. Without giving him enough time to react, Hua Xiong beheads Yu Shi with a single powerful strike from his spear. The decapitated body of Yu Shi falls down on the ground. Hua Xiong challenges the enemy generals after introducing himself. Yuan Shi gets angry and he breaks his wine glass. He orders another one of his generals to bring the head of Hua Xiong to him, but his general seems to be a bit hesitant. Yuan Shi asks him why he is afraid of only a few thousand soldiers from the Xiliang army, and Liu Xun informs him that they have an advantage in numbers, but they are hardly ready for a fight after their long and hard journey. Yuan Shi starts cursing his own men, but Wen Jie informs him to not get hyper. He introduces a giant man by the name of Pang Feng, who will take care of Hua Xiong for them. Pang Feng is looking forward to his fight with Hua Xiong. The poor infantrymen are still barely holding back the cavalry from the Xiliang army. All of a sudden, the city gates open and they tell each other to retreat back. The infantrymen start running back to the gates while a horseman comes out. Hua Xiong lets the infantrymen retreat and he asks about the identity of this horseman. The horseman introduces himself as Pan Feng. He then chops off the limbs and heads of those who are trying to escape. This shocks their fellow infantrymen who have no idea about what to do next. Pan Feng then starts rushing toward Hua Xiong while killing every single infantryman on his way. Pang Feng tries to slash Hua Xiong, but he manages to dodge it. Hua Xiong then retaliates by striking him back, which gets blocked by Pan Feng. Pan Feng then starts using a barrage of attacks on Hua Xiong. He can easily dodge all of his attacks as he has brute force but no speed. Hua Xiong then skillfully pins down his weapon on the ground. Fan Peng used too much force in that previous attack and his weapon got stuck into the ground. Hua Xiong seizes this chance to swiftly chop off his head. Both warlords who are spectating it get really pissed. Wen Jie, who has just lost one of his most powerful fighter, tells his men to gather up as he's going to kill Hua Xiong today. Meanwhile, inside the city, a sentry arrives. He informs both Meng De and Ben Chu that General Yuan and Inspector Wen Jie have both been defeated. Ben Chu is still skeptical as the war has not even started yet and they lost so easily. The sentry informs them that someone showed up and killed both General Yu Shi and Pan Feng. Inspector Wen Jie led his men to avenge them, but their efforts were to no avail as Inspector Wen Jie just returned back after suffering several injuries. Before the scout can say anything else, both Yuan Shu and Wen Jie arrive at the camp and they are pissed at Hua Xiong. Yuan Shi asks for more reinforcements, but he gets rejected, while Meng De tries to uplift the spirit of Wen Jie by saying that winning or losing are part of life, and he's glad that he returned safely. Ben Chu says that marching out after having two big losses on their side will just demoralize their army, but Yuan Shi is still hesitant to back down. Meng De tells them both to join their meeting as they were discussing plans on capturing Changao city. They all gather up on the table and Meng De starts telling them their strategy. Hua Xiong is a really powerful general who is on the rise, but they have Lu Bu as well who outclasses him. Lu Bu even managed to defeat Sun Jian in a terrific manner, and killing him would bring them halfway to the victory. General Hu Zhen is just an incompetent leader in the Xiliang army. He is the most crucial weak link in all of this, and they can take advantage of his weakness. Li Su is the general who is tasked with guarding Changao, and he has always shut himself behind the gate. The Grandmaster must have sent some reinforcement for them to be so bold enough. Changao's geography is a major plus for their defense, but the Xiliang army is much more proficient on the offense. That's why they keep on being on the offensive. Ben Chu asks him if he has any idea on how to counter them. Meng De says that they will limit their advantage by camping right outside Changao city and attacking them anytime they want. If they force the Xiliang army into playing defense, then the tides of this war can be turned. The next day in Changao at Lubu's residence, a scout arrives with the report that the coalition forces have arrived. Hua Xiong says that two of them were just killed by him yesterday, so he did not expect them to strike back so soon. Lubu asks the scouts about who is leading the coalition forces. The scout says, based on the flags, it should be Hanyi's feudal lord Wang Kuang. The other 7 feudal lords are also on their way. Hua Xiong asks for Lubu's permission to head out first, but Lubu tells him that he will not be the one on the front line this time, and he calls out Gao Sun. Lubu orders Gao Sun to gather everyone as it is time to confront the enemy, and he orders Hua Xiong to tag along with him. Hu Zhen says that he has made many mistakes in the past, and now he wants to repent for them by assisting Lubu in this fight. Lubu tells Hu Zhen to not put up an act, as rats should just stay in their rat holes. Instead of getting pissed, Hu Zhen smirks, which means he is up to nothing good. After some time, both armies come face to face against each other. Wang Kuang is leading this army and he looks quite motivated. He asks Lubu why he only brought a few thousand men with him and if he's looking down on him. Lubu mockingly says that Xu Rong defeated him last year and their grandmaster broke through his city without much effort. The few men Lubu brought with him here are more than enough to defeat a weakling like him. Wang Kuang orders one of his general named Fang Yue to kill Lu Bu. Lu Bu slowly moves ahead with his horse while Fang Yue is sprinting at full speed, as speed is a crucial element to maximize the strength of long weapons. The greater the momentum, the harder the weapon hits, but Lu Bu is riding so slow despite their distance. Even if Lu Bu is a reincarnated god of war, there is no way he can withstand his striking force. All of a sudden, Lubu flares up and he sprints forward at an unbelievable speed. Lubu uses this speed to cut down Fang Yue into 2 pieces along with his hard armor and weapon. Wang Kuang gets a bit afraid after watching the savageness of Lubu. He orders his men to surround Lubu from all sides. The whole army start rushing toward Lubu in unison, but Lubu is not fazed by their numbers as he easily keeps on chopping them like a grinder. At the same time, Gao Sun orders the battle rams to charge forward. The battle rams are easily taking care of the vanguard of Wang Kuang's army. Wang Kuang can't believe it as he's thinking he's up against an army of monsters, and finally he orders his men to retreat. But before he can start running, Lubu rushes toward him at max speed. He strikes Wang Kuang with the side of his weapon. The force behind it was so strong that his bones start cracking. Wang Kuang gets tossed up into the sky due to the pressure, and his whole army can see him. He then falls down into the middle of his army, and they get really afraid after seeing the expression on the face of their dead feudal lord, and his armor is battered as well. A scout reports to Ben Chu that Wang Kuang died while fighting on the battlefield. The He army under him has crumbled and they are scrambling for their lives. Ben Chu asks Meng De about what they should do, and Meng De tells him to rest assured as the show has just begun. Lubu might have gotten a taste of victory, but he doubts that he will be able to return victorious. Meanwhile, outside the Changao gate, Hua Xiong is screaming at the guards to open the gates, but no one is responding. Lubu tells him to stop shouting as those inside might have turned against them. He now knows well why Hu Zhen acted so strange back then. He got everything planned beforehand. He only offered to help to prevent any suspicion. Hua Xiong says that the 7 feudal lords will arrive in no time, and if they are still stuck here at that time, they can be easily defeated. Lubu orders Gao Sun and Hua Xiong to get everyone into formation and prepare for a breakout. The field where Lubu fought against Wang Kuang is littered with the corpses belonging to the He army. 3 different feudal lords arrive at that location. One of the feudal lords, Gong Sun, is quite sad after watching the fate of He army. One of his soldiers informs him that a survivor asked to see him. The soldier informs Gong Sun that their feudal lord has perished alongside many other generals, including Fang Yue. Lubu went on a rampage and wreaked havoc in their army. Those who are still alive are now scattered in all directions. Gong Sun asks the survivor if Lubu is really that much ruthless, but before he can reply, a scout arrives with a report. The scout informs him that Lubu is back with his men, but the feudal lords don't know why he is coming back as his soldiers must be exhausted after this fight just now. Tao Gian suggests that the 3 of them should join forces to wipe out Lubu, but Zhang Yang says that Lubu is known for his ruthlessness and he can't be overwhelmed with numbers. And why would he return to the battlefield if he knows that victory is impossible? Gong Sun is quite sure that he can take on Lubu by himself using his white cavalry. He rushes on ahead with his white cavalry as he wants to find out whether Lubu can best him or not. On the other side, Hua Xiong spots the incoming army, and he informs Lubu that this white cavalry belongs to Gong Sun, who is quite prominent in the northern regions. His cavalry consists only of robust white horses. They are the most elite troops among their army. They have never tasted defeat, so Hua Xiong suggests Lubu to not take them lightly. Lubu smirks as he has seen elite cavalries of 10 times the size in the simulator world. Lubu orders Gao Sun to order his archers to get into formation. After getting into formation, they fire a huge volley of arrows toward the white cavalry. Lubu rushes toward the white cavalry along with the arrows. Gong Sun orders his men to get ready for the fight. Gong Sun's army start deflecting the incoming barrage of arrows with their spears and halberds. Gong Sun rushes toward Lubu while dodging the arrows. Both of them clash with each other at max speed, which gives out a huge shockwave. Lubu compliments Gong Sun for having such a good quality spear. Gong Sun also praises his halberd, which is called Fang Tian. Hua Xiong and Gao Sun both order their platoons to charge ahead. Both elite armies charge at each other with the intent to kill. Regular soldiers keep on attacking back and forth while their leaders are duking it out. Lubu and Gong Sun are giving their all as they both know well the one who even holds a little bit back will fall in this field. The sound of their clashing halberds can be heard throughout the battlefield. Both of them change their tactic as they start moving ahead while attacking each other. Gong Sun is very quick and he thrusts his spear toward Lubu. The spear grazes through the skin under Lubu's forearm. Lubu is thinking that the weapon of Gong Sun is quite good as he managed to sneak in a jab between strikes. Lubu is thinking that the initial level of heart strengthening helped him a lot during his fight with Sun Jian, so he decides to use his newly unlocked liver strengthening. A lot of qi and blood starts circulating near his liver and heart, making him stronger with each passing second. Gong Sun is thinking that Lubu is getting more fired up as their fight is dragging. He feels that some something is wrong as Lu Bu should have gone for the kill as his stamina is totally overwhelming his, but Lu Bu is intentionally keeping things at his pace. In short, Lu Bu is toying with him until Gongsun dies from complete burnout. Gongsun is thinking that Lu Bu is humiliating him and he prefers death over humiliation, so he charges head on with a jab attack. Their clash ends in someone being stabbed. Gongsun's spear falls far away from him. Lu Bu stabbed Gongsun near his heart and he is thinking that maybe he has already reached his limit. Despite being born in a noble family, Gongsun was looked down upon for his mother's inferior background. Without any lust for luxury, he set off for life in the battlefields from an early age. In the 5th year of Zhongpin, Gongsun troops were trapped in Guanji City for over 200 days. They were running out of rations and the soldiers were eventually doomed with over half of the men being dead or injured. In order to uplift the morale of his men, Gongsun said that their vow to destroy the northern tribes will never be shaken. They will all act as each other's wing from now on, and if victory befalls them, they will name themselves the White Cavalry. With that being said, they marched out of the castle gates and wreaked havoc among the enemies. His White Cavalry fights with a fusion of determination and courage, and only those who have gone through countless rough rides could master such power. Gongsun pulls out his sword as he's determined to never give up until the last moment. Then he tries to stab Lu Bu using all of his force, but unfortunately, Lu Bu is not a pushover, and he catches his sword with his bare hands. Lu Bu then slashes him with his halberd. Lu Bu pulls up his weapon and he tells Gongsun to better choose his enemies in the next life. As Lu Bu is about to kill him for real, he feels an immense killing aura from behind. He immediately blocks the attack coming from his back, then he pushes the attacker away from him. This attacker is called Zhang Fei, and he says that Lu Bu holding off thousands of men by himself is just a joke as he's going to defeat him today. Zhang Fei rushes toward Lu Bu to attack him again with his spear. While blocking his attack, Lu Bu asks him about where he is from. They both keep on clashing with each other and Lu Bu is thinking that this black horseman is not any less experienced than him. However, his rigid technique means he won't last past 80 rounds. But before Lu Bu can focus on the black horseman, he feels a green dragon murderous aura coming from behind. Lu Bu barely manages to dodge it and he buckles up for another powerful fighter. This horseman is called Guan Yu and he compliments Lu Bu for having such swift reflexes and an incredible horse. Both horsemen plan to join forces in order to defeat Lu Bu. Both of them get powered up and Lu Bu can see their murderous intent with his naked eye. After getting geared up, they rush toward Lu Bu at max speed to finish him off as soon as possible. Lu Bu, who is getting overwhelmed with this sense of danger, thinks it's quite amazing, as he can fight against both of them to his heart's content without holding back. Both parties keep going back and forth with their attacks for some time, but Lu Bu seems to be having the upper hand. Both brothers try to attack Lu Bu in unison so he can get less chances to attack them, but Lu Bu manages to dodge their attacks by ducking down on his horse. Their fight gets more intense as both parties can't land a decisive blow to the other, and they keep on going back and forth with their attacks. Both brothers are managing to successfully pin down Lu Bu's movement for a while. The soldiers around them stop their fight to seize this once-in-a-life opportunity to witness the fight between the two brothers and the god of war. Gongsun, who is spectating from afar, is trying to gauge the extent of their abilities. He is thinking that those two brothers are not that much different from roaring dragons and tigers. Another horseman called Liu Bei comes up to Gongsun and he says that he is sorry for being late. Gongsun asks him why are all of them in here. Liu Bei says that their desire to overthrow those bastards drove them here, and it's fortunate that his two sworn brothers arrived so early. On the other side, Lu Bu is still duking it out against the two brothers. Lu Bu compliments them by saying that both of them are too competent to be nameless commoners, and he asks them for their names so that can be written on their tombstones. Zhang Fei angrily introduces himself and his brother, but all of a sudden another person appears behind Lu Bu with intense killing intent. Lu Bu manages to block his attack thanks to his high threat perception. Lu Bu is thinking that with his benevolent appearance, this third brother is nowhere suppressing as the other two. However, he is emitting a faint imperial aura. Lu Bu says that their appearances are unlike the others, and if they have been acting alone and waiting for their chance to shine. Liu Bei says that they have been under Gongsun's command for now, and they are in dire need of Lu Bu's head to make a name for themselves. Lu Bu has to only leave 3 things behind, including his halberd, his horse, and his head. These 3 brothers will divide these things among themselves. As they rush toward him, Lu Bu says that unfortunately, he don't have a plan of giving them any one of these things. A soldier belonging to the battle rams pierces through the chest of a white horseman, but his neck gets pierced from behind. The white cavalry seems to have gotten an upper hand in the battle. Lu Bu is thinking that he would have lived to take this fight to check out the full extent of his heart and liver strengthening, but his subordinates are all engaged in a bloody fight and they need to break out as soon as possible. The death count will only rise if he drags this fight any longer. So Lu Bu unlocks his max heart and liver strengthening at the same time. Lu Bu does a big slash to open up a path for himself, and then he starts running while saying that they will fight another time. Lu Bu shouts out to Hua Xiong and Gao Sun to inform them that their enemies are weakest at the right wing, so he orders them to summon all the soldiers and focus on a breakout through their right wing. The other two feudal lords are spectating the battle from a distance. Another feudal lord called Kong Rong comes up to them and he asks them about the status of the battle. Zhang Yang informs him that Gongsun went on ahead to battle it out with Lu Bu, and they are currently in a stalemate. A scout comes up to them to inform them that General Gongsun is injured after losing the fight and Lu Bu is breaking through the north side with his men. Zhang Yang is a bit worried as the infamous white cavalry of Gongsun is having a hard time against Lu Bu. Tao Gian says that Lu Bu is probably at the end of his tether, and this is the perfect opportunity to take over the achievements. Zhang Yang orders one of his general Mu Sun to kill Lu Bu. Kong Rong orders another general under him called Wu An to help Mu Sun. Lu Bu is clearing the way for his army and his generals order their men to follow Lu Bu's lead. They manage to pierce through the weak formation of the enemy. But as soon as Lu Bu breaks out, two more generals come running toward him and they start cursing him out loud. They are quite unfortunate as Lu Bu is in a hurry, so he chops them both in one strike. The platoon from Bing gets scared after their two generals got defeated. Lu Bu tells his fellow townsmen from Bing to listen carefully. He says that he truly don't wish to harm any of them, but if they wouldn't back off, they will suffer cruelest fate than death. The soldiers from Bing open a path for him. Lu Bu along with his men start rushing out of their formation. Wu An has not died out yet, but he lost one of his hands and he curses the soldiers from Bing for being so much unreliable. Lu Bu still needs to break through two more feudal lords as they start rushing toward him from both sides. Lu Bu is thinking that both of these armies are going to merge before them, and then it will become impossible to pave a straight path out. He will be surrounded if he goes straight or to the right, but on the left side, Tao Gian's army is the closest and weakest army out of all. Lu Bu orders his men to break out from the left side. Tao Gian becomes afraid after watching Lu Bu and his forces rushing toward him as he was just planning on stealing the kills, but now he has to face them head on. Tao Gian is a coward, so he orders his men to stay away from the path of the retreating army of Lu Bu. After passing through them, Lu Bu smirks and he tells Tao Gian that he is the wisest of them all. Their path ahead is clear as Lu Bu can't see any more forces belonging to the feudal lords. Lu Bu asks Hua Xiong about how many soldiers are left. Hua Xiong informs him that most of them died and the only ones who made it out are from the Xiliang cavalry. The Xiliang infantry and the battle rams including Gao Sun have been caught up and surrounded by the Beihai cavalry. Lu Bu asks Hua Xiong to retreat with everyone else. With that being said, Lu Bu starts heading back to the battlefield. But unknown to him, the Xiliang cavalry decide to give backup to Lu Bu, and they start following him. The battle rams and Xiliang infantry are all surrounded from all sides by the enemy, and Lu Bu is making his way back to the battlefield. At the same time, Tao Gian is hoping to gain merit by finishing off the battle rams and the remaining Lu Bu's infantry. But before he can order his troops to attack the enemy, a scout informs him that Lu Bu is charging at them once again from behind. Tao Gian's expression changes as he has no idea what Lu Bu is thinking right now, and he orders his men to stay away from Lu Bu. Another feudal lord called Bao Xin spots Lu Bu and his cavalry coming back to the battlefield. He orders his archers to rain down arrows on the crowd as they can't miss this opportunity. One of his men says that he should reconsider it as their coalition forces are tangled in there as well. Bao Xin says that it's the perfect opportunity for them to weaken other feudal lords, so he orders his men to shoot the arrows. Inside the encirclement, Gao Sun is barely fending off the enemies. Lu Bu arrives there to help him out. Gao Sun asks Lu Bu why he has returned back. Lu Bu tells him to shut his trap up as they are here to rescue him. Lu Bu picks him up by the collar and tells him to man up to live another day or he will become a joke among the Xiliang soldiers. Lu Bu further says that he needs to stay alive before the North Army's glory can be restored. But before he can reply to Lu Bu, Gao Sun sees a lot of arrows heading toward them. He pushes Lu Bu to the side to shield him from the upcoming barrage of arrows. This scene reminds Lubu of the same thing that happened back in the simulation world where General Yan's daughter pushed him to the side to save his life. After saving Lubu, she said to him that everything will be alright as long as Lubu survives. The same thing happened here and Gao Sun says the same thing to him. Tao Gian and his men also got caught up in the arrows and most of his men are dying as well. Hua Sheng asks Gao Sun about his injury and he tells him that it's not fatal, but his voice is trembling. Lubu says that it is great that Hua Sheng came here as well. Lubu tells them that he has changed his mind and he points toward a direction. He orders all of them to break through from that direction and on their way, they are going to get the head of the general who ordered his men to shoot the arrows. Lubu orders Hua Sheng to help Gao Sun onto his red horse. Lubu temporarily activated blood pump mode due to his inner rage. Lubu tells them that he will use his feet instead of the horse and he gets ready to use perks of the simulation system to the max. Lubu puts all of his power into his feet to launch himself toward Bao Xin. Bao Xin can't believe a human can be so much fast and he orders his men to shoot down Lubu. Lubu keeps on deflecting and dodging the arrows by moving in a zigzag formation. Without wasting any further time, he jumps toward Bao Xin. Bao Xin sees death flashing before his eyes and he begs Lubu for his life, but Lubu slashes him into 2 pieces with his halberd. Lubu gets surrounded from all sides by Bao Xin men, but Lubu easily keeps on chopping them like paper, and he seems unstoppable. Bao Xin's men try to run away as far as possible from the rampaging beast, but they are not so lucky as Lubu is hell-bent on completely destroying them. Meanwhile, on the other side, a scout reports to Ben Chu that the 8 feudal lords had joined forces outside Changao, but Lubu still managed to escape with almost 1,000 of his men. The Hene soldiers dispersed after their warlord died and almost half of the elite white cavalry perished, while Beihai army was completely annihilated. Lubu went on a rampage and he kept killing hundreds of men by himself while taking the heads of several other generals in the process. Only Tao Gian's army remains largely intact as he let Lubu go without a fight. Ben Chu says that Lubu must have died from exhaustion after all of this and maybe he's possessed by some divine devils. Meng De tells Ben Chu to leave Lubu alone for now because without Lubu, capturing Changao is a piece of cake for them now. Hu Zhen is on the walls of Changao and he's thinking that Lubu must be torn apart by the coalition army by now. But it won't be easy to defend this place, so he will have to rely on Li Su for now. Hu Zhen orders his men to summon Li Su. Li Su asks Hu Zhen why he has banned him from meeting Lubu, and Hu Zhen tells him that Lubu has defected to the enemy. He further says that he had no idea if Li Su was an accomplice of Lubu, that's why he kept him under watch. But Li Su says that if Lubu had defected, then why Hu Zhen is still alive? Because it will be easier for him to just kill them both and hand over Changao to the enemy. Hu Zhen says that he is right, as he just made up that story to get rid of Lubu. But Li Su needs to act smart if he wants to live long in this situation. He tells Li Su that it won't be long before the coalition forces start attacking the city, and they will both be dead if the city falls. So both of them have the same goal for now. Li Su says that he agrees with him, but he needs to go and get the tiger's seal to order the soldiers around, and Hu Zhen agrees to it. Li Su is thinking that he has invested a lot of effort into Changao City, but Hu Zhen just snatched his powers away despite being a newcomer. He even set up Lu Bu, who must be long dead by now. The way things are going now, even if they manage to fend off the enemy, he will be killed. So he is thinking of fleeing the city, and if he tells the Grand Master about what Hu Zhen did, then maybe he will be spared. After some time, all armies belonging to the feudal lords gather outside Changao. Liu Bei says that they can forget about the recent setback if they manage to conquer the city, and Gongsun says that he is right. Tao Gian orders the catapults to get ready. His men lit the rocks on fire using oil. On his command, they launched the catapults at the same time. The fiery rocks hit the buildings, damaging the city walls in the process. The infantry moves forward with their siege battle rams and ladders to scale the walls. Hu Zhen's men are protecting him while he asks his men why is Li Su taking so long. His men report to him that they cannot find Li Su and maybe he ran away. Hu Zhen gets down as he knows well that Li Su must have ran away to tell the Grand Master about the blunder he just did. One of his men asks him about how they should defend their city and Hu Zhen tells them to just surrender. After some time, Gongsun makes his way inside the city along with other feudal lords. He is thinking that they conquered Changao so easily, which has been an obstacle for them for more than a year. Someone smacks Hu Zhen's face with a powerful slap. It turns out to be Zhang Fei, who asks Hu Zhen why he let Lubu out. Hu Zhen says that his hatred for Lubu runs deep in blood. That's why he denied his entry, hoping the coalition army will eliminate him. But he didn't expect the Lubu to turn the tides on them and escape. Liu Bei says that even if Lu Bu escaped, he don't have enough men left and he's no longer a threat now that they have captured Changao. Zhang Fei suggests that they should kill this backstabber Hu Zhen, but Liu Bei says that they should not do such a thing because Hu Zhen raised the white flag and surrendered to them and no one will cooperate with them in the future if they execute him. Hearing that, Hu Zhen boasts that he's quite close with the Grand Master and he can give them some secret intel about him. This shocks everyone as they were not expecting to get their hands on a man with real information about the Grand Master. Gongsun orders his men to set up a banquet for Hu Zhen, and he says that they should talk further while having some good food. During nighttime, Lubu and his tattered men are resting in a forest. Gao Sun tells Lubu that his injuries are nothing serious, and he should rest as well. Lubu asks Gao Sun that if they manage to return safely, he will request with the Imperials for Gao Sun to be placed under his command. Gao Sun says that this war has really made the battle rams respect him even more, and he will gladly join him. Hua Xiong arrives and he reports that they have finished counting the remaining men. There are 521 horsemen and 352 infantrymen from the battle rams. They have now 873 men in total, and Lubu is thinking that if he started with more than 3,000 soldiers, but still so many infantrymen survived that long battle, which is quite amazing. Lubu says that their soldiers must be worn and torn by now, and they need food and shelter, so he asks Hua Xiong about any nearby town of smaller scale. Hua Xiong informs him that some soldiers have reported about a small town named Junyi 20 km away from their current location, and he asks Lubu if he plans to capture it as a base for their recovery. Lubu says he is correct, but his body has reached its limit for today after those intense fights, so he orders Hua Xiong to lead cavalries into the town to secure its 4 gates, and Lubu will arrive there later. As Hua Xiong is about to leave, Lubu asks him to tell the soldiers to only steal rations from the rich. They can only resort to force if they refuse to provide food. Hua Xiong is a bit hesitant, but he agrees to it. Lubu sits right next to Gao Sun and he's feeling quite tired. Lubu is thinking that he was being too careless and he's determined to take his revenge on that backstabbing bastard, Hu Zhen. All of a sudden, Gao Sun says that he never expected Lubu to sympathize with the poor commoners. Lubu asks him why he thinks so, and Gao Sun informs him there are rumors about Lubu out there which suggest that he is a cruel and merciless person. But after following him for some time, he came to a realization that those rumors are fake. Lubu asks him what if his change in character is due to his many transformations after living through numerous lives. Gao Sun thinks that he's telling the truth, but Lubu starts laughing out loud. Gao Sun says that when Lubu was fighting today, he was releasing an aura which looked very unnatural for this world. Lubu says that he is correct, and as he was about to tell him something important, a hungry tiger pops out of the woods. Gao Sun says that this tiger looks terrific, but Lubu tells him not to call him terrifying as he's going to end up as their meal today. Lubu grabs his bow and arrow. Lubu stretches the bow, but he could not pull it too much because he's totally exhausted. Lubu releases the arrow, but at the same time, someone else throws a halberd toward the tiger. The halberd gets stabbed in the head of the tiger and the arrow gets buried in its neck. Lubu asks about the identity of the person who threw the halberd, and he's thinking that someone who is capable of throwing a halberd directly into the skull of the tiger cannot be a common person. This person's name is Dian Wei, and he's releasing an unknown type of aura, and he says that he tracked this tiger all the way here as it was supposed to be his ration for a few days. Lubu is thinking that this person has a parallel aura to his, and he is undoubtedly an exceptional prodigy, and he needs to take him in. Lubu says that in that case, he can take the tiger. Lubu first introduces himself and then he asks for his name. Lubu releases some aura to intimidate him. Dan Wei can feel that this person is no ordinary soldier after seeing his aura, and he introduces himself to Lubu. Lubu compliments him for having such a good physique, and he asks him if he's interested in joining the military. Dian Wei tells him that he can't do that as he has already killed some people. He further says that if he ever leaves this forest and the officials get notified, then he will be left with no other choice but to kill more people. Lubu starts laughing out loud after hearing it. Lubu informs him that no average laws can restrict him if he joins his army, and it's even better if he has killed some people before. But he can kill to his heart's content once he steps on the battlefield, and he will be even rewarded for his kills. Dian Wei asks him if he's telling the truth. Lubu tells him that he will appoint him as a discipline enforcer, and later on he will appeal for a higher position for him once he starts contributing to the military. Dian Wei gets down on his knees out of respect for his new general. He has nothing to offer to Lubu for now, so he gives his prey to Lubu and he accepts it. Lubu is thinking that this feeling of receiving gifts from others is quite amazing, and he orders the soldiers to roast the tiger. The next morning, a scout comes with a report that Huashong captured the Junyi town, and they will need about 8 hours by foot to reach that town. But Lubu says that 8 hours by foot is a lot of travel. Dian Wei informs them that he knows about a shortcut that would lead them to Junyi town in just 4 hours. The Grand Master becomes really angry at Hu Zhen after hearing about his betrayal from Li Su, who escaped from the city overnight. One of his generals, Shu Rong, gets on his knees and he asks for the permission of the Grand Master to march toward Changao to recapture it. Grand Master orders him to spearhead the vanguard and he will lead the main army himself, and they will recapture the city as soon as they can. A few days later, a big war occurs on the other side of Changao City. Gongsun informs Meng De that other side of Changao was easily penetrable but hard to defend. That's why retreating from there was the only option left for him. He asks for Ben Chu's permission to go back as he needs to reconstruct his elite white cavalry. Meng De is thinking that Gongsun and Sun Jian undoubtedly are the ones with the most contributions, and they also suffered the greatest losses in this war. If one of them hits the drum of retreat, the whole coalition army will start to dissolve. Meng De allows him to retreat back, and Gongsun thanks him back in return. Ben Chu asks Meng De why he let Gongsun go so easily, because the morale of the other warlords will also dip after hearing it, and Meng De says that Gongsun wouldn't have stayed back even if he had begged him to stay. He further informs him that a messenger reported earlier that Lubu has shifted toward Yike Pass after snatching provisions from the wealthy households of Junyi, but Ben Chu says that coalition forces can't deal with him right now as they are already stuck in a stalemate with the Grand Master. Meng De informs Ben Chu that Grandmaster is riding on a great momentum of victory after victory. Their confidence will only grow if they come to know about Lubu's survival. Ben Chu says that this plan seems fair as they can finish off Lubu once and for all while he is still recovering, and he asks Meng De if there is anyone capable for this task in his mind. Meng De tells him to rest assured as he already dispatched 2 capable generals who are more impatient than them. It seems like Meng De sent Bo Fu and his uncle Gong Fu for this job. Bo Fu is bursting with anger as he wants to take revenge for his father's death. His uncle Gong Fu tells him to be a bit more patient or their trap will be ruined. They already set up a trap ahead, and once Lubu steps in it, there will be no going back for him. Bo Fu is barely controlling his anger and he punches a piece of rock lying nearby. It slides down from the cliff and lands near Lubu's horse, alerting him in the process. Lubu starts scanning his surroundings for any possible trap. He informs Huashong that going ahead can be dangerous as they got some company. Huashong was about to scream at their enemies to come out, but Lubu orders them to not alert the enemies. He further tells them to organize the soldiers quietly, and they will backtrack by the same way they came in. Bo Fu gets angry as Lubu turns back, and Gong Fu says that maybe they have been detected. Bo Fu says that they should hurry down for the final showdown, but Gong Fu informs him that this is what Lubu wants, and they should not play into his hands. Bo Fu starts crying as taking revenge for his father is his dream, and this is the only chance they can get. Gong Fu gets a flashback of the scene when Sun Jian was pierced by Lubu's arrow, and he told them to run away and preserve their bloodline. Gong Fu agrees with his nephew in taking down Lubu, but he asks to be the vanguard because he has seen Lubu fight before. He will divert Lubu's attention, and Bo Fu will take a detour and join him with their main force. Bo Fu agrees to it as Gong Fu only needs to occupy Lubu for some time while he makes his way around and join him with their main force. After some time, Lubu is heading back with his army. He comes to a stop and looks back after realizing an arrow has been shot toward him. Lubu slashes the arrow with a swing of his halberd. Gong Fu rushes toward Lubu along with his men. He tells Lubu that today is the day his tyranny will end. Lubu gives off a grim smile as his enemies finally got impatient and showed themselves. Lubu orders his men to charge at the invading force. Gong Fu is killing off every cavalryman belonging to Lubu on his way. He knows well that Lubu is a monstrous bastard who cannot be taken down using force, so he pours oil on himself. He makes a line using oil and then he throws the oil bag toward Lubu. Lubu slashes the bag, but unknown to him, it was filled with oil, and it gets splattered on his armor and clothes. Gong Fu dashes toward Lubu at max speed. Lubu dodges his attack and he pierces the shoulder of Gong Fu with his halberd. With his dying breath, Gong Fu orders his men to fire the flaming arrows toward him. One of his cavalrymen launches a fire arrow toward him. Everything gets lit on fire after getting in contact with the flaming arrow, which in turn results in a big explosion as the gunpowder under Gung Fu's clothes come in contact with the fire. Lubu gets engulfed by the raging blaze, and this time, even his generals are worried about his safety. Bu Fu, who was watching all of it from a distance, is still in shock as he don't know why his uncle sacrificed himself like that. Lubu is on fire and he drops down from his horse. His men rush toward him to check on him, but Lubu gets up on his own and he tells them that mere flames like these are nowhere close to his speed. Gao Sun is wondering about who can be so desperate to die in a suicidal attempt, and Hua Xiong is thinking that he saw some lightning dispersing out from Lubu and maybe he was just hallucinating. Lubu says that he knows that man well as he was a general under Sun Jian, but he didn't expected him to seek revenge like this. He further says that soldiers of Sun Jian are really faithful warriors, and he orders his men to bury Gung Fu honorably after the fire is extinguished. Meanwhile, on the cliff, Bu Fu and the commander under him still cannot believe that Lubu is still alive after all of this. The commander asks Bu Fu for his permission, but Bu Fu says they will retreat for now. The commander is a bit persistent, but Bu Fu tells him that his uncle knew better than them that how much terrifying Lubu truly is. That's why he sent them away while he proved his point with his action. He already pushed his uncle into the pit of death, so no one shall sacrifice in vain anymore. Bu Fu is thinking that revenge is a dish best served cold, and he will patiently wait for his chance to strike back. Gao Sun informs Lubu that the remaining forces of Sun Jian are not that far away, and if they should chase after them, but Lubu tells him to not mind them at all. Their main objective is to reach Yike Pass, so he orders them to hit the road. A few days later, Lubu arrives at Yike Pass with his men. The brother of his wife, Wei Shu, who was temporarily appointed as the city lord of Yike Pass, welcomes him, and Lubu asks him about the current situation. Wei Shu informs him that Hu Zhen turned over Changao to the coalition army right after setting Lubu up. Fortunately, Li Su rushed back overnight and reported to the Grand Master. He appointed Shu Rong as the vanguard to fight the coalition army, and the coalition army has completely withdrawn back to Changao City. On the other hand, Hu Zhen is now guarding the Ao Granary for the coalition army. After hearing the current events, Lubu tells Wei Shu to set up a feast for his soldiers who are fatigued from their long journey. Dian Wei asks them if there's going to be wine in the banquet, and Wei Shu tells him that Lubu already set up a rule to not serve wine to the soldiers, as it can cause some blunders in their performance during the battle. Dian Wei starts screaming out loud that having wine after a long battle is the basic right of a soldier. Lubu looks back at his soldiers and they are looking dim. Lubu tells Wei Shu to take out the wine and serve it to the soldiers. The soldiers become really happy and they toss out their helmets while saying, "Long live General Lubu!" The morale of soldiers is touching the skies after having some wine. Meanwhile, in the main hall, Hua Xiong and Dian Wei are enjoying their feast. Lubu looks at Gao Sun and he's not looking that much excited about this feast. Lubu asks him why he's not having any food. Gao Sun asks Lubu that he already knew that wine can brew some disasters, so why did he make an exception today? Lubu tells him that he understands his concern, and he banned wine in the first place in order to assert his dominance and establish a tenacious army. It seemed to be the right move to him in the past, but lately he has been trying to think from a different perspective, and he came to a realization that some measures were needlessly extreme, and he cannot force others to follow something that even he do not follow in the first place. Gao Sun thanks Lubu for enlightening him, and Lubu tells him to not wear a stern face all the time, and he should enjoy his time in here. After a few days, strategist Wen Yu arrived at Yike Pass, and Lubu personally goes outside to welcome him. Wen Yu informs Lubu that the Grand Master was overjoyed after hearing that Lubu is safe and sound. If it wasn't for the war with the coalition army, he would have personally welcomed him. He introduces a new general which was appointed by the Grand Master as the new permanent guardian of Yike Pass. Lubu tells Wei Shu to come with him after he is done passing over the work of the city lord to this new general. Wen Yu compliments Lubu for his military contributions in this war, as his sensational combat prowess has awed the whole empire. So the Grand Master dispatched an emissary to Chang'an to ask His Majesty for Lubu's credits. Wen Yu pulls out a box and he informs Lubu that the seal inside this box is granted by His Majesty. From today onwards, Lubu will be the East Pacifying General as well as the Marquis of Pingtao, with authority over setting up his own administration. Lubu says that these rewards arrived faster than he expected, but he don't deserve them yet. Wen Yu asks him about what he means by that and if he's trying to go against the Emperor verdict. Lubu informs him that it is not the case, as he just wants to make another contribution which will make him really worthy of these rewards. Wenyo knows well what Lubu is trying to say, so he tries to convince him to not get revenge on Hu Zhen, as the Grandmaster is already in talks with the coalition army for ceasefire, and if the war continues, other powers like the White Wave Bandits will take advantage of it. Lubu says that the bastard Hu Zhen has brought countless deaths among his soldiers. If he backs down now, his soldiers will not trust him with their lives in the future. Lubu asks his fellow soldiers if they want to charge toward our granary with him, and they reply with a yes. Wenyo pulls out the Grandmaster's seal and he orders the soldiers to stay put. Lubu informs him that this seal is capable of commanding his soldiers, but it cannot command him. Lubu asks Dian Wei that he is not officially a soldier yet, so if he wants to go with him and take down Ao Granary. Dian Wei replies with a yes, as he can kill a lot more people to his heart content if he follows Lubu. Wenyo tries his best to convince Lubu, but he takes off without listening to his request. Dian Wei pushes Wenyo aside, and he tells Wenyo to not block his path to a carnage. A few days later at the Ao Granary, some soldiers from the Hu Zhen army are requesting rations from the general in charge of the food distribution. The general tells them that his job is to simply tally the rations and deliver them to the higher-ups for as much as they demand, and he don't care about some barbarians belonging to Hu Zhen. The Xiliang soldiers are quite pissed after being called barbarians, but they can't do anything as the general says that they made a mistake by following Hu Zhen, who is an incompetent bastard. He further says that they should have followed Lu Bu if they wanted to be respected by others. Someone shoots an arrow toward the general. It pierces through his throat, and his lifeless body falls down to the ground. The soldiers standing there think that maybe the soldiers of Hu Zhen killed him off as he was bad-mouthing them. But before they can do anything, a halberd is thrown toward them, and it pierces through the head of the commander. These attackers turned out to be Lu Bu and Dian Wei. The soldiers get ready to kill them as there are only two of them, and they can be promoted to a higher rank if they can get the head of Lu Bu. Dian Wei tells Lu Bu to leave them to him, and Lu Bu allows him to go all out. Dian Wei gets down from his horse and he jumps up. He leaps toward the group of soldiers who are trying to attack them. Dian Wei easily cuts off most of them in a combo attacks of uppercuts and slashes. Dian Wei pulls out his first halberd from the head of the dead commander. Some soldiers are trying to run away from Hu Zhen men as bait, and Dian Wei starts heading toward them. Lu Bu orders him to kill the soldiers belonging to the coalition army and leave Xiliang army to him. Lu Bu heads over to the two commanders of Xiliang army. He remembers them both as he was the one who personally promoted both of them. He says that their situation is not looking well, and they must be disgusted by that coward Hu Zhen. Without wasting any time, both of them get on their knees. They tell Lu Bu that Hu Zhen is a timid and incompetent general, and they are willing to follow Lu Bu till their deaths. Other soldiers of Hu Zhen get on their knees as well, and they say that they also want to follow Lu Bu from now on. Lu Bu orders them to gather the soldiers under them and lead them to Hu Zhen. Dian Wei is a bit pissed as he wanted to kill the Xiliang army as well. Meanwhile, Hu Zhen, who is under the influence of alcohol, asks his servants for more wine. He gets startled after Lu Bu breaks his wine jar with his halberd, and he tells them there is no more wine for him. Hu Zhen gets really scared after finding out that Lu Bu is still alive, and he calls for his soldiers. Lu Bu tells him to save his effort as he has taken in most of the Xiliang soldiers under him. As for the trashes from the coalition army, they have already been taken care of by Dian Wei. Lu Bu tells Hu Zhen that he burned all bridges and led countless soldiers to their demise. Hu Zhen gets on his knees and he starts begging Lu Bu for his dear life by saying that he will be the loyal dog of Lu Bu from now on. Lu Bu says that in the case it is fine and he will give him a chance. Lu Bu will count to 10, and if Hu Zhen manages to get out of this room, then he will be set free. Plus, Lu Bu will not use his hands during those 10 seconds, and Hu Zhen asks him if he's telling the truth. Lu Bu says that his words are worth thousands of gold, and Hu Zhen gets ready to run after hearing it. Hu Zhen starts running after Lu Bu starts the countdown, and Lu Bu powers up his heart for the maximum boost of speed. After counting up to 4, Lu Bu uses his leg to kick his halberd toward Hu Zhen, and it chops off both of his legs. Hu Zhen is screaming with pain, but he starts crawling toward the exit. He finally makes it out of the room before the count of 9. But all of his morale shatters as Lu Bu appears right in front of him in just a second, and he tells Hu Zhen that it's unfortunate that he didn't grab this opportunity. Hu Jian says that Lubu tricked him, and Lubu says that he's right, and he should complain about Lubu to the king of the underworld. He orders his soldiers to execute Hu Jian as he is done with him. Hu Jian curses Lubu for being a liar, and Lubu thanks him for his kind compliment. With that being said, Lubu's men chop off Hu Jian into tiny pieces. Meanwhile, on the other side, Bofu is going back to his town to recuperate. Ben Chu says that losing or winning are common things in military affairs and he should not be discouraged by this, and Meng De assures him that they will take revenge for him. Bofu says that he wants to fight Lubu himself, but right now, he can't do anything against that monster. A scout comes in with a report stating that Lubu led an army of 2 and took down Ao Granary. He hung up Hu Jian's head on its wall as well. He further reports that all 3,000 soldiers of Xiliang army under Hu Jian's command surrendered to Lubu, and their supply troops were also slaughtered by them. Ben Chu still can't believe Lubu did all of that with just 2 men. Bofu informs both of them when he had not met Lubu, he thought he was just a little stronger than the average generals. But after meeting him, he realized that Lubu had no trace of humanity left in him. Lubu is an invincible demon, and his father did not die due to a mistake at that time. Therefore, he tells them both to be careful while dealing with Lubu in the future. And with that being said, he takes his leave. Meng De is thinking that his worst nightmare is coming true as first Gongsun left and now the son of Sun Jian. Meanwhile, at the Ao Granary, a soldier reports to Lubu that all the grain has been made into dry rations. Lubu tells his soldiers to listen well, as tomorrow they will follow him to take back Changao. Lubu says that he will personally teach a lesson to the coalition army, and his men give out a battle cry. Lubu is thinking that these soldiers have been oppressed for so long, and now they've got a chance to vent out their frustrations. With these type of suicidal soldiers, he can easily win this upcoming battle. A few days later at Changao City, strategist Zi Yuan informs Ben Chu that Han Fu requested to return to Jizhou to supervise the supply of grain, and he's afraid that it's not a good thing. Ben Chu asks him about what they should do. Zi Yuan says that the current situation of the war is chaotic, and the era of warlords dividing the lands in the eastern region will arrive soon. Ben Chu says that he knows it well. It's supposed to be a restoring order, but in reality, it's actually a pretext to oppose the central authority. Zi Yuan informs Ben Chu that he is the alliance leader for now, but once the war settles down, the warlords will try to gain as much land as they can, and Han Fu will definitely become an obstacle to him at that time. Right now, if the Grandmaster decides to prolong the war, he will just cut off the food supply and provisions, and in less than a month, the coalition army will collapse without a fight. Ben Chu becomes afraid after hearing this, and he tells Zi Yuan to not make such groundless and exaggerated statements, as Han Fu is a respectable person, and he would not do such a shameful act. Zi Yuan says that human hearts are difficult to fathom, and as a leader, one must always be prepared for the worst. Ben Chu says he's right, and asks him about what they should do next. Before Zi Yuan can reply, a scout comes in with a report stating that Lubu, along with approximately 3,000 soldiers of Xiliang army, appeared in the east side of the city. And Zi Yuan says that it is good that he came here on his own. Zi Yuan tells Ben Chu that Lubu is a brave and skilled warrior, but the rations he seized from the Ao Granary will only last him for 3 days at most, and as long as they delay him, they can then attack and take back Ao Granary from behind while cutting Lubu's retreat option at the same time. They will then cut off the food supply to Lubu, and he will die from starvation. He further says that they can take advantage of Lubu's pretext to detain Han Fu and weaken the military powers of other warlords at the same time. Ben Chu says this is a perfect idea, and they should head toward the city walls to meet other warlords right now. After some time, Lubu is standing right outside the city walls. Lubu shouts out loud that the huge and mighty coalition army is cowering behind the city walls and refusing to fight him since they are afraid that they will lose just like last time. Lubu starts cursing Ben Chu, and Ben Chu gets really pissed after hearing it. Ben Chu orders the archers to quickly shoot arrows at Lubu. A volley of arrows is shot toward Lubu, but he's standing in his place without moving an inch. All arrows fall down a few inches away from Lubu. Lubu says that if this is all, or if they are trying to gift arrows to him. Lubu pulls out his bow and arrow, and he tells them to look carefully as he is going to teach them how to properly use a bow. With that being said, Lubu shoots the arrow. It flies toward the part of the wall where Ben Chu is standing on. Ben Chu ducks down and the arrow pierces through his hair. After that, the arrow destroys a big wooden flag behind him. The destroyed wooden flag falls down on the ground with a big bang. Ben Chu is bursting in anger and he shouts out that whoever goes out and brings him the head of Lubu can have his position as the coalition army leader. After hearing it, his dumb brother Yuan Shu says that he will do it. Meanwhile, Meng De informs them that Changao is easy to defend but hard to attack. The front of the castle gate is a narrow path, and if they open it, Lubu can easily keep on chopping off the soldiers in that narrow path, and they will not be able to overwhelm him with their large numbers. Warlord Kong Rong suggests that they should send a brave general out to provoke Lubu and lure him closer to the castle walls. They can just ambush him with several other generals once he is closer. But Ben Chu says that Sun Jian is dead, and Gongsun is not here and he don't know about any other brave general. Kong Shu comes over and he informs Ben Chu that he has a fierce general under his command. His name is Liu Li, and he is skilled in using a giant mountain opening sword, and he has boundless strength. Kong Rong says that Kong Shu is correct, and he will send 4 of his elite soldiers to assist Liu Li. They all agree on that, and the city gates are opened after some time. General Liu Li comes out of the gate and he challenges to Lu Bu to do a one-on-one battle with him. Poor Liu Li was about to say something else, but he gets a headshot with an arrow. His dead body falls down back inside the city gates. The other elite soldiers who were there to assist him run back inside after making excuses that their stomach is not feeling well today. Kong Shu starts crying out loud after witnessing the death of his most powerful general. Kong Rong tells them to forget it, as they cannot compete with Lu Bu's strength. They will leave once his supplies run out. Meanwhile, Ben Chu is thinking these warlords are not fools, and they will not do something risky after suffering these losses. On the other side of the battlefield, Lubu is getting tired after standing still for so long. Lubu says that these bastards have turned into turtles and they are hiding inside their shells. He orders his entire army to camp here, as they will now engage in a long-term confrontation with them. After some time, his men are done with setting up their camp. Dian Wei is trying out the bow and he shoots an arrow toward Lubu. Lubu barely manages to dodge it in time, and he asks Dian Wei if he's trying to seize this opportunity to take over his position. He tells Lubu that he was quite impressed after witnessing his archery skills, and how he took down the enemy general in one shot was an extraordinary kill, so he was just trying to see if he can use the bow like him. Lubu tells him that physical strength alone is not enough, and he could not even hit a target in such a short distance. He can accidentally kill his own soldiers, and Dian Wei says that he will not touch a bow and arrow ever again. A scout comes with a report stating that the coalition army from Xingyang City has taken over Ao Granary. The soldiers who were defending the city have evacuated according to Lubu's instructions and have returned to their respective troops. Lubu asks him about how many soldiers did they send, and he replies with 50,000. Lubu gives off a grim smile, as this was the moment he was waiting for. He orders his commander to keep a few troops in here so they can pretend like the whole army is still stationed in here. Lubu orders Dian Wei to follow him with his soldiers as they are going to raid Xingyang City, and Dian replies with a yes. A few days later, Lubu took advantage of the opportunity to attack and capture Xingyang. The main general Kang Hong abandoned the city and fled to the Ao Granary. Lubu entered the city and he recovered a large amount of food and supplies. After learning about this news, the coalition forces dispatched troops to attack Xingyang from all sides, but they were unable to capture it for a long time due to the distraction caused by the Grand Master in the rear and the fierce resistance of Lubu. Meng De informs Ben Chu that the warlords want to retreat, but Ben Chu says that they cannot retreat now or they will lose this war. If this campaign fails, they will all become rebels and no one will be able to escape. Meng De informs him that the situation can still change, as yesterday the Grand Master sent a peace treaty. As long as they withdraw their troops, all the past matters will not be held accountable. Ben Chu says that the other warlords may not have any issues with this plan, but as the instigator, he will be killed by the Grand Master. Dong Zhou is doing this all on purpose to simply divide and rule. Meng De tells Ben Chu that he is worrying too much. It's just that the other warlords are losing too much by continuing this battle, and they will definitely take this opportunity to withdraw their troops. He is afraid that when the time comes, the Grand Master will issue an edict to raise the so-called Banner of Justice to stir up the warlords. When that time comes, both Meng De and Ben Chu will be the target of their campaign. Ji Yuan comes up and he tells Ben Chu that he has a plan that will make Lubu withdraw his troops. Ben Chu asks him about what kind of plan he has in mind. Ji Yuan tells him that he will keep it a secret for now, and he will tell them about its details once it succeeds. A few days later, Yi Yuan arrives at the camp of the Grand Master Dong Zhou, and he asks him to withdraw his troops. Dongzhou says that right now his army has the advantage in the battle, and he asks Ziyuan about where did he got the courage to come and act like he can order him around. Ziyuan tells him that there are many rebel forces among Xiliang army, and the White Wave bandits must be making him quite anxious these days. He knows well that the Grandmaster don't want to drag out this battle with the coalition army anymore, but right now, everyone refuses to back down, and it's nothing more than a matter of pride and status. The Grandmaster tells him to not beat around the bush and get straight to the point. Ziyuan tells him that this world is a chaotic place nowadays, and the Grand Chancellor must want to have strong generals by his side, especially Lubu, who is 1 in a million prodigy, and therefore, if Lubu was to be defeated, it would be a big loss for the Grandmaster. Currently, Lubu is besieged by the coalition army and he's trapped inside Xinjiang City, but he's still holding on somehow. In a few days, the coalition army will definitely break through and capture him, and this will serve as a huge blow to the Grandmaster's army morale. He tells the Grandmaster that if he recalls Lubu, they will also follow the trend and retreat, which will guarantee Lubu's safe return. The Grandmaster is thinking that he also wanted to make peace, but his grandson Lubu is a stubborn fellow, so he asks Wen Yu about what he thinks about this situation. Wen Yu says that this is all nonsense and full of lies. Lubu's 3,000 troops can easily suppress the lords of 8 towns. If the coalition army could kill Lubu somehow, then it will serve as a big morale boost for their army, and they would never let Lubu go if that was the case. Wen Yu says that there can be 2 possibilities. First, there is a crisis of falling out of trust within the coalition forces, and the second possibility can be that the situation of Lubu must not be as dire as he described. On the contrary, it will pose a threat to their rear, and that's what forced Ziyuan to come here and negotiate. Ziyuan stays silent as what Wen Yu said is correct. The Grandmaster tells Ziyuan to return back to the coalition army as he cannot kill an envoy between 2 armies. Ziyuan comes back and reports everything that transpired at the Grandmaster's camp to Ben Chu. Ben Chu gets really angry as he was waiting for a good news from his side, and Ziyuan apologizes to him for his incompetence. Ziyuan starts leaving and Mengde tells him to stop as his visit to the Grandmaster was not all in vain, as every warlord knows that he returned after meeting with the Grandmaster. He pulls out a decree which he wrote after Ziyuan left to meet the Grandmaster. He further tells Ziyuan to just show this edict to the warlords and falsely claim that it came from the Grandmaster. Then those warlords will be left with no other choice but to comply with them. The next day, the warlords open the edict which states that Ben Chu should be the one who will bring peace and pacify the empire. But he was misled by other warlords and he temporarily deviated from the right path. The Grandmaster hopes that Ben Chu can wake up from his confusion and raise a righteous army to support the royal family together with the Grandmaster and hand over the rebellious warlords to the imperial court for punishment. And if Ben Chu complies with it, the court will no longer investigate the past transgressions of Ben Chu, and he will be rewarded with glory and honor by the royal court. The warlords get really pissed after hearing it and they start begging Ben Chu to not trust this edict by the Grand Chancellor, and they will win this battle no matter what. Ben Chu tells them to not worry as back then they handed the leadership position to him. He further says that they will face this crisis together and they will fight together till their deaths. Ziyuan is thinking that Mengde is too vile as he already knew that the negotiations were going to fail and he waited to use his failure to their advantage. Hanfu rips the edict in 2 after saying that he will follow Ben Chu till his death. All other warlords also say the same thing and they tell Ben Chu to dispatch them to whichever place he wants. A few days later, Hua Xiong and Gao Sun arrive at Xinjiang City along with their troops. Lubu asks them that why did they disobey the military command and come here. Hua Xiong informs him that the Grandmaster came to know of his marvelous achievements and he sent them here on his own in order to suppress the coalition forces. Lubu is thinking that it must be the idea of Wen Yu, and that guy is really good at taking advantage of every situation. Lubu tells them to take a rest first as tomorrow they will cut off the enemy's food supply and his generals agree on it. The next day, a platoon of the coalition forces is moving with the food supplies. They come to a stop after watching Lubu and his men blocking their way. Lubu gives off a grin smile and he orders his troops to charge forward with him. The platoon leader knows he is in deep trouble and after a few hours, the whole platoon gets slaughtered. Ben Chu becomes angry after hearing about it and Ziyuan suggests that they should surround and destroy Lubu once and for all or they will lose this battle from both fronts. Ben Chu says that Lubu has taken over the city of Xinjiang and he's using guerrilla warfare tactics from all directions, and he asks Ziyuan if he has any other good idea. Ziyuan says that he believes Meng De must have come up with a good idea by now. Meng De asks them about what was the last time Lubu was in a desperate situation, and Benchu tells him that it was most likely the time when they trapped him outside Changao, but unfortunately he still managed to escape. Meng De says that the last time he was lucky enough to escape, but if they were to give it a second try, he will definitely have no chance to escape. Lubu is currently using hit-and-run tactics to disrupt their food supply chain, which will indirectly affect their stalemate with the Grand Master, and once they don't have enough strength to fight, the coalition forces will retreat from Changao on their own, and Lubu will try to take advantage of that opportunity. Benchu says that knowing how Lubu operates, he will try to block their retreat. Meng De suggests that they should transport a large number of supplies out of Changao City to create an illusion of withdrawing the troops. Lubu will definitely come after them after finding out about it. Ziyuan says that Lubu is not a fool, and if they try to arrange ambushes like this, then Lubu will find out. Meng De says that they will hide their soldiers among the supply wagons and transport them outside the city. They will hide in the mountains and prepare themselves for the ambush. Ziyuan agrees with him on it, as this plan sounds really good. Benchu starts praising Meng De for having such extraordinary strategic capabilities, but Meng De informs them that the previous strategy of fake edict and this one is not his strategy. They were suggested to him by Sun Jian, who was once a court official in Luoyang. He was dissatisfied with the Grand Chancellor's plan to dispose of the emperor, so he resigned from his position and left. It was him who gave advice twice to Meng De through letters. The next day, Gaosun informs Lubu that a large number of supply wagons have been transported out of Changao these past few days. Lubu says that it seems like their efforts are finally paying off. The incompetent coalition warlords are finally unable to hold on, and they must be withdrawing their troops very soon. Lubu orders Gaosun to gather all troops and advance toward Changao, as he wants to trap the coalition forces inside the city until they die. Meanwhile, inside the territory of Youzhou, Liu Bei reports to Gongsun that the coalition forces are planning to withdraw while Lubu is currently gathering his troops. He further informs him that the coalition armies can't defend against attack from both sides, that's why they are left with no other choice but to retreat, and Lubu will try to block them inside the city. Currently, both sides must be engaged in a fierce battle, and if they launch a surprise attack from the rear on Lubu's forces, they will easily be able to get all the credits for this victory. But Gongsun says that he cannot do such an unreasonable thing, as he already bid farewell to Benchu. Liu Bei tries to convince him by saying that after this, there are going to be many conflicts among the warlords and he can achieve a dominant position among them. But Gongsun says that he is fully aware of the advantages and disadvantages of the situation, but Lubu is simply undefeatable. He further says that the coalition forces are going to get hit really hard this time, and it is better for his white cavalry to stay out of this war so they can recuperate their forces. Liu Bei comes out and he informs his brothers about the decision of Gongsun, and they are quite pissed with it. Jiang Fei says that Gongsun is a coward and he dares to call himself the leader of white cavalry. Liu Bei tells his brothers that at this point, it seems like the three of them will have to go on their own. He informs his brothers that other warlords know about the three of them and maybe they will gain some unexpected gains from this war. After some days, Lubu is moving through the territory of Guoting with his army. Lubu is thinking that something is off as things have been going too smooth for him. He orders Hua Xiong to be on standby with 200 cavalrymen, and in case something unexpected happens, he can provide support to Lubu. Hua Xiong asks him the reason for it, as dispersing troops now can be a grave mistake. Lubu says that he has a vague feeling of uneasiness in his heart, and it's better to leave a way out. After some time, Lubu arrives at Changao. Yuan Shu along with Meng De are amazed as their plan finally worked. Meng De asks Ziyuan about this strategy and he tells them that such extraordinary strategies can only be executed by those who are adept at them, and it is quite difficult for ordinary people to achieve this level. Meng De is thinking that based on his understanding of Sun Yun, he is not capable of such strategies and most likely there is someone else pulling the strings behind the scenes. Lubu shouts out at the warlords that he came here after knowing that they are retreating. Yuan Shu gets agitated after hearing it and he tells Lubu to not be arrogant as he fell right into their trap. He keeps on spouting bullcrap while Lubu prepares his bow. The warlords get down from the walls and Meng De asks the foolish Yuan Shu about why he provoked Lubu. Yuan Shu hands over the command to Meng De and he retreats back inside the city. Meng De is thinking that this Yuan Shu is a complete fool and he's wondering that Benchu should have sent the reinforcements by now. After a while, a huge army comes up from the rear side of Lubu. Gaosun says that there are too many soldiers and he has no idea about how they managed to mobilize such a large army outside the city without alerting anyone. Lubu says that it does not matter anymore as their top priority is to escape from here. Lubu will lead the cavalry to break through the enemy lines and open up a gap while Gaosun will lead the infantry to follow up. Lubu says that Dian Wei wanted to go on a killing spree for a long time, and he asks him if these numbers of enemies are enough for him to kill, and Dian Wei replies with a yes. Lubu orders him to clear the way for the vanguard units, and he is tasked with protecting General Gao Sun with his life, but Dian Wei says that he is afraid. With that being said, Lubu takes off and he orders Xiliang cavalry to follow him. Lubu is a bit shocked as the savage Dian Wei just told him that he is afraid to die, but Lubu thinks that once he starts killing, his worries of death will wash off. With that being said, Lubu charges right into the middle of the incoming infantry. Meanwhile, Dian Wei is right behind him, wreaking havoc among the foot soldiers. Ben Chu is spectating the battle unfold from a distance, realizes that Lubu is trying to break through from the east. He tells his generals to surround Lubu from northeast direction. After some time, Lubu gets completely surrounded and he realizes that these reinforcements came too quickly, and someone must be commanding them from a high altitude. This reminds Lubu about an advice General Yan gave him in the simulator world. In the past, General Yan told him that he is good at winning battles with fewer troops, and he asks him if there is no city gate to rely on in the rear and the enemy has more troops surrounding him, then what he will do. Lubu replies by saying that he's dull and cannot come up with a clever strategy, so he humbly asks the general to teach him. General Yan tells him that having more troops is an objective advantage, but once there are too many troops, the speed of transmitting orders gets slower, and there will be a big time lag between each order. If the enemy troops are arranged in layers, he can just move in a zigzag formation to confuse the enemy general who is relaying orders, and once the enemy troops are confused with too many orders, they can use this chance to break through from a single direction. General Yan's teachings can be put to test in this situation, so Lubu orders his troops to turn right and charge forward. After seeing this, Ben Chu orders his troops to surround Lubu from the right. At the same time, Lubu orders his men to change direction and charge through their left this time. Meng De, who is watching all of this unfold from the city walls, thinks that this current development is not good. He is thinking that Lubu is perfectly taking advantage of enemies' big troops, which are hard to move around, and he is consistently changing the direction of his charge to confuse the enemy. On the other side, Ben Chu tells his commander that they cannot stop Lubu anymore, so he orders them to light the red smoke signal and to notify Tao Qian to prepare for attack. After watching the red smoke signal, Tao Qian realizes that Lubu is heading toward them. One of his generals, Sun Guan, says that this is their chance, but Tao Qian is having second thoughts. Tao Qian knows well that so many soldiers under Ben Chu couldn't stop Lubu, so he don't think he can stop him either. He knows well that Lubu is a beast who can easily ravage through his foot soldiers, but he cannot back off right now. Liu Bei arrives there with his brothers and he asks Tao Qian if he's struggling to think of how he can deal with Lubu. He further tells him that the three of them can help him deal with Lubu. Tao Qian remembers seeing them with Warlord Gongsun in the past, and Liu Bei says he is correct, and he introduces himself to Tao Qian. Tao Qian asks them about Gongsun and if he's going to join this war, but Liu Bei tells him that the three of them came alone on their own to settle the score with Lubu. They can help Tao Qian by getting rid of Lubu for him, and Tao Qian is thinking that these three were able to pin down Lubu in the past, and this is an opportunity sent by the heavens, and Tao Qian agrees by saying that he will appreciate their help. Liu Bei and his brother thank Tao Qian for his general's proposal. On the other side, Lubu barely made it out of Ben Chu's army formation. All of a sudden, he hears a familiar voice calling him out. This voice turns out to be from Zhang Fei, who comes running toward Lubu while his brother tries to stop him. He clashes with Lubu on horseback, but Lubu blocks his attack. Before Lubu can retaliate, Guan Yu tries to attack him. Lubu keeps on blocking their attacks and he tells them that they are quite persistent. He asks them about their third brother and if he's planning to pull another sneak attack just like last time, but Guan Yu tells him to not slander their brother name and they're both enough for him. Lubu looks around to scan their brother among the countless enemies, but he could not find him, so he thinks that maybe he went to his rear to finish off his men. All of a sudden, someone reports to Gao Sun that a group of people suddenly charged in from their right side. Gao Sun knows well that this person had a battle with Lubu in the past, and he remembers Lubu saying that this person was not that much strong. But he is very good at observing the situation and waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike, so Gao Sun starts rushing toward him to finish him off. Both of them clash their swords for the first time. They keep on attacking back and forth. Liu Bei tells Gao Sun that Lubu is being occupied by his two brothers right now, and he will not be able to come to the rescue this time, and they cannot give back up to Lubu as they are being stopped here by him. Gao Sun tells him that he's mistaken, as he has someone as fierce as Lubu in his vanguard unit. This person turns out to be Dian Wei, who have killed so many people that his fear of death is no more, and he is starting to emit an evil aura of carnage. Gao Sun orders Dian Wei to go and kill the morale of their enemies right now, and Dian Wei obliges to his order. Dian Wei dashes toward the platoon of enemies which just arrived with Liu Bei. He goes on a berserk mode and he keeps on massacring the enemies left and right. After watching it, Liu Bei realizes that this person is as good as Lu Bu, so he orders his men to retreat for now as he needs the help of his two brothers to get rid of Dian Wei. Liu Bei starts running off and he tells General Sun to hold off the enemy while he comes back with the reinforcements. Meanwhile, on the other side, Lu Bu is being pinned down by the two brothers. Lu Bu is thinking that these two brothers have improved significantly since the last time they met. All of a sudden, Lu Bu feels an attack coming from his back. He quickly pulls his halberd to block the attack from Liu Bei. Lu Bu says that it was expected as he used this same cowardly trick as last time. Liu Bei tells his brothers that they're going to first kill off Lu Bu, then head to the rear to kill another beast. All three brothers rush at Lu Bu at the same time. They attack Lu Bu in unison, but Lu Bu easily brushes off their attacks. This intense situation triggers Lu Bu's heart strengthening and he starts sparking up with strength. The attacks of three brothers get even fiercer and Lu Bu gets a few slashes on his body. Liu Bei is thinking that they have been battling it out for a long time, but they barely managed to land a few slashes on Lu Bu, and Lu Bu is thinking that these three brothers are the best fighters in the world and he cannot hold them back for much longer. Even the assistance of the system is not helpful in this situation. All three of them attack Lu Bu once again in unison. This time, Lu Bu is on edge and he's barely holding on against them. They manage to land two big cuts on Lu Bu's chest. Lu Bu falls down from his horse and he thinks that maybe this is the place where he will die. And watching the hooves of the black horse reminds him of the simulation world where he died by getting stomped by horses. But before they can chop off his head, Lu Bu's vision gets blurry. He gets a bunch of system notifications stating that his mental synchronization rate is increasing rapidly and it starts giving error after reaching 133%. After encountering so many errors, the system's self-protection mode activates. This mode pulls out the inner beast of Lu Bu and he easily catches the halberd of Zhang Fei with his bare hands. Zhang Fei is trying his best to pierce Lu Bu, but he cannot get past his hand grip. The red energy seeps into the spear of Zhang Fei and he feels a hot sensation. Lu Bu seizes this chance to jump over and kick Zhang Fei right in the face. Zhang Fei drops down on the ground after receiving the kick. At the same time, Guan Yu tries to chop off Lu Bu with his halberd, but Lu Bu blocks it using the spear of Zhang Fei. After the impact, the whole body of Guan Yu starts trembling as if he just hit iron. Lu Bu picks up his halberd from the ground and he tries to kill Guan Yu with it. Guan Yu barely manages to dodge it, but he still gets a cut on his face. Without giving any time to Guan Yu to retaliate, Lu Bu kicks him right in the face. Guan Yu falls down from his horse and Lu Bu jumps toward him to pierce him with his halberd and the spear. Guan Yu manages to do a backflip on time which saves his life for now, but before he can get his feet on the ground, Lu Bu kicks him in the face. The kick was so powerful that it sent Guan Yu flying a few meters away from him. Liu Bei cannot believe what he just saw as Lu Bu was struggling to keep up with them a few moments ago. But Lu Bu is looking completely uninjured right now and he gets a notification stating that the system is under maintenance. Without wasting any time, Lu Bu dashes toward the third brother at an unbelievable speed. Guan Yu can't let Lu Bu to hurt his third brother, so he musters up his strength in order to save his brother. Zhang Fei tried to grab Lu Bu, but Lu Bu brushed him off in time. Zhang Fei is unarmed right now, so he asks his elder brother for the sword and Liu Bei throws his sword toward him. Right after catching the sword, Zhang Fei attacks Lu Bu. Lu Bu seizes this chance to pierce the head of Zhang Fei with his halberd, but his halberd gets parried by Guan Yu's halberd. The three brothers are once again in a stalemate with Lu Bu, and Liu Bei tries to attack Lu Bu from behind. But before he can land his attack, Lu Bu performs a backflip to kick off Liu Bei's sword. Lu Bu then does a follow-up attack with a halberd swing which manages to put a cut on Liu Bei's body. Zhang Fei and Guan Yu are worried about their big brother. Liu Bei informs them that he's fine and they should be both careful while dealing with this monster. Lu Bu starts swinging in a circle to land several hits on both brothers. Both of them are suffering from big cuts with every swing attack Lu Bu performs, and they don't know how a human can have such power. In the end, both of them could not keep up with Lu Bu's speed. They fall down on the ground and their bodies are filled with small cuts. Lu Bu is laughing like a demon and he starts looking around. After watching a big enemy platoon, Lu Bu rushes toward it at max speed. He then starts wreaking havoc among their ranks, and the brothers have no idea why Lu Bu left them alive and went for the foot soldiers. Their big brother thinks that maybe Lu Bu is in a state of insanity all along. Unfortunately, they're still alive, so he tells his brothers to seize this chance to withdraw. Zhang Fei is worried about his spear because Lu Bu took it along with him, but his brother tells him to forget it if he wants to live a longer life. On the other side, Dian Wei has killed enemies to his heart content, but he ran out of stamina, and Gao Sun compliments him for his effort. Dian Wei asks Gao Sun if he performed well compared to General Lu Bu. Gao Sun says that he is already doing an excellent work, and he believes that after some more trials and challenges, he will be able to compete with Lu Bu. The whole army under Gao Sun gets alerted as someone breaks through the enemy formation, and his demon-like laughter can be heard from a mile away. After watching Lu Bu, Gao Sun says that he's having second thoughts and maybe Dian Wei can never match the strength of Lu Bu. Meanwhile, Lu Bu is standing on the dead bodies of countless brave men from the coalition army, and he is fully pumped up like a true god of war.